Chapter 4461. Oh. Gong Jie took the spoon away and pushed the bowl of porridge in front of him. Ah. Lick it. Lick. Have you ever seen a puppy lick water? Gong Jie held his chin elegantly. The porridge is not hot. It's okay to lick it. Hua Jin snorted and lowered his head, intending to lick and drink it. He was really hungry. When Gong Jie saw this, he immediately took the bowl away. Hua Jin was unhappy. What? Stop fooling around. I'm really hungry. Gong Jie held the bowl of porridge and stirred it with the spoon. Beg me, I'll feed you. Pervert. Hua Jin took a deep breath and smiled hypocritically. I beg you. I can't feel your sincerity. Boss. Hua Jin continued to show a charming smile. I beg you, feed me. Because of his charming smile, even Gong Jie couldn't help but fall into a trance. After being stunned for half a second, he pursed his thin lips and scooped a spoonful of porridge to his mouth. Hua Jin took a bite and let out an ah. It's so sweet. The porridge was actually sweet. In the past, he was famous for being a salty person. He always thought that porridge was either tasteless or salty. This was the first time he tasted sweet porridge. It was as if coconut milk was mixed in. It was very delicious. It's delicious. Eat more if it's delicious. Hua Jin was touched. Since he was young, it seemed that there were very few people who served him porridge, especially a young master like Gong Jie. It was a rare opportunity to be served by him. It was an honor. I didn't expect sweet porridge to be so delicious. Do you want to try it too? Under his encouragement, Gong Jie also took a sip. He raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. However, it was delicious. Isn't it sweet? After drinking a few mouthfuls of porridge, his empty stomach finally eased a little. Gong Jie fed him very slowly. After all, for someone like him who had not eaten for a long time, his stomach was already very sensitive and weak, so he had to drink more slowly. Hua Jin looked at the way Gong Jie fed him seriously, and his heart was indescribably moved. Hua Jin lowered his head. Thank you. Thank you. Gong Jie looked at him. What are you thanking me for? Thank you for taking care of me these past few days, and you risked your life to save me. If not for him, he would have been burned alive by those bastards. Thank you. Gong Jie's lips curled into a smile with a hint of displeasure. How are you going to thank me? He had intended to thank him, but he did not expect Gong Jie to ask such a question. How should I thank him? Just these two words. Gong Jie was obviously skeptical about his so-called gratitude. Hua Jin also felt that he approved of it. Gong Jie seemed to be unable to express his sincerity with just the two words thank you for taking care of him. However, how should he thank him? Gong Jie came from a privileged background. As the chief commander of the Hurricane Group, he seemed to have nothing to worry about. Perhaps in his eyes, the gratitude that he could give him was not even worth mentioning. How do you want me to thank you? He might as well let him make a request. Gong Jie dismissed it with a smile. That depends on how sincere you are. Otherwise, Hua Jin made a decision that he regretted very much. How about I give myself to you? After he said that, he was amused by his own joke. Gong Jie did not laugh, but his gaze deepened. The porridge bowl was suddenly put down. Chapter 4462. Hua Jin was shocked by his serious expression. He retreated and retreated until his back touched the bed. There was nowhere to hide. He swallowed nervously. This man couldn't have taken it seriously, right? Or was he just trying to scare him? This man seemed to really like to scare him and tease him. While his mind was in a mess, Gong Jie got closer and closer. In the blink of an eye, his handsome face was so close that he could not escape. Devote yourself to me. Gong Jie suddenly snorted. His breath, which was like orchids, attacked his face and lips unscrupulously, making his heart beat faster. Hua Jin's breathing was about to stop. Gong Jie, that's what you said. Gong Jie's voice became hoarse and deep, but it was extremely sexy. When he said this, his Adam's apple moved clearly, as if he was prepared for something. Hua Jin did not know why, but his whole brain was pulled into a mess. In the next second, Gong Jie lowered his head. His thin lips were slightly opened and gently but tremblingly covered his lips. His lips were inexplicably cold. However, when his thin lips were slightly opened, the temperature between his lips and teeth was like magma, almost melting his lips. He kissed him. Such a realization subverted all of Hua Jin's willpower. He wanted to struggle, but his hand, which had been in a coma for 7 days, did not have the strength to lift it, let alone resist his invasion. This way, Gong Jie could casually taste him. There was still a little sweet porridge left on his lips. He kissed the small and cute rice together. The sweetness in his mouth, he did not know if it came from the remnants of the sweet porridge or from the taste between his lips and teeth. Gong Jie, Hua Jin called out his name in a daze. Gong Jie, however, turned a deaf ear. When he kissed him, perhaps only then did he realize that he had been planning this for a long time. Hua Jin could not tell if the man was being serious or just teasing him with the kiss that he had been planning for a long time. Hua Jin couldn't hold on any longer and slipped onto the bed. Gong Jie bent down and took advantage of the favorable position to go deeper and deeper. Kissing him felt so sweet. At first, he was only testing the waters by lingering on his lips. Slowly, he became dissatisfied and gently pried open his teeth. A sweet and fragrant breath overflowed from between her lips and teeth. He tasted it to his heart's content, as if he was tasting a cup of thick tea or a fragrant dessert. Gong Jie pinched his face, but he didn't want to hurt him, so he loosened his grip. Just as Hua Jin was out of breath, he finally let go of him. At this time, Hua Jin was already fiercely stunned, and his entire body was stiff to the point he was unable to move. Yes, it's very sweet. Gong Jie looked into his eyes and smiled. It's sweeter than porridge. Hua Jin's face lit up at the mention of these words. He blushed, and his face looked like it was on fire. He had too many questions to ask, but there were too many uneasiness that he had nowhere to ask. Gong Jie straightened up and saw that Hua Jin was motionless. He knew that his sudden kiss seemed to have frightened him quite a bit. A joke, as if it was too big. Hua Jin's mind was in a mess. The most chaotic thing was that his body and his instincts didn't seem to have much resistance to Gong Jie. What was wrong with him? What was going on? Chapter 4463. Hua Jin asked in a daze, why? At this moment, only these 3 words could show his chaotic state of mind. What was this Gong Jie doing? Was he teasing him? Otherwise, why did he kiss him? However, if he was teasing her, why did she sense the complicated feelings in his kiss? After acting for so many years, he could feel whether there was any emotion in a kiss or a look. Gong Jie's kiss made his heart, which was already in a mess, even more chaotic. Gong Jie suddenly smiled. Why? What do you mean why? Why did you kiss me? Let's be together. Gong Jie also said something that undoubtedly messed up Hua Jin's state of mind even more. Perhaps, if it were not for this accident and the fact that they had not survived a disaster together, Gong Jie would not have been able to understand his state of mind. But since he had kissed him, it meant that he had already seen through his own heart. Since he had seen through it, given Gong Jie's straightforward and domineering character, he would openly express his feelings. He hated it the most when he obviously liked someone and had feelings for him, but was still hesitant. This wasn't his style of doing things. Hua Jin choked. He didn't expect Gong Jie to make such a request. Be together? Hua Jin deliberately changed the topic. Aren't we together now? Gong Jie said, don't play dumb. Hua Jin was speechless. Hua Jin's skills were nothing in Gong Jie's eyes. Changing the topic? Gong Jie naturally wouldn't give him such a chance. I'll give you time to think about it. Gong Jie sat on the side of the bed with his arms crossed. Rather than saying that he was giving him time to think about it, it was better to say that he was forcing him to give in. It was domineering and domineering. This was Gong Jie. Hua Jin lowered his head. His thoughts were still in a mess. In less than 5 seconds, Gong Jie turned his head and asked, have you made up your mind? It hadn't even been 5 seconds. He only asked if she had made up her mind. Didn't you say you would give me time to think about it? Gong Jie raised his wrist and looked at his watch. It's been half a minute. You call this giving me time to consider? What else? How long do you want? Gong Jie raised his eyebrows. It's just a few words. How long do you need to think about it? 1 day? 1 month? A year? If you agree, it's good. If you don't, it's bad. Hua Jin asked curiously, what if I agree? Then let's be together. What if I don't agree? You can't escape. Can't escape. Hua Jin complained, am I prey? We'll be together sooner or later. Hua Jin finally broke down. Then why did you ask me to consider it? We're going to be together sooner or later anyway. When Gong Jie heard that, he smiled and gently put his arm around the back of his neck. You're quite self-aware. Since we're going to be together sooner or later, then there's no need to hesitate. Hua Jin really didn't know how to answer. My mind is a little messy. I'm tired and sleepy. I want to rest for a while. Oh. Gong Jie stood up and ordered the servants to clear the plates. Then he said to him, have a good rest then. Hua Jin didn't say a word. He let him cover him with the blanket, lay on the bed, and closed his eyes. He heard the door close. Gong Jie left. Hua Jin closed his eyes and forced himself to fall asleep quickly. Chapter 44-64. He recalled how the two of them had first played a punishment game and touched each other's lips through a tissue. He also recalled every scene with him, until they were in East Africa. Especially when he thought of how he slept so peacefully on his lap and how touched he was when he risked his life to save him. If he didn't like him enough, how could a proud man like Gong Jie bear so many dangers for him, weave through the rain of bullets and appear in front of him? Gong Jie liked him. This knowledge completely subverted Hua Jin's rationality. It wasn't that he had never been liked by a man. However, there had never been a time when it was as shocking as Gong Jie's words. Hua Jin recuperated in bed for a few days. During this period, Gong Jie didn't come again. Alice also came to see him and told him about Natalia's situation. Natalia changed into a typical psychological trauma after a kidnapping. After all, she was still such a young child. She had witnessed Professor Romanka's throat being cut and beheaded with her own eyes. That bloody visual stimulation had become a nightmare in her heart until now. These few days, Alice, Yo-Yo, and Gong Jie took turns to accompany her. Natalia's psychological trauma was very serious. It could be seen from her sleep. Often, in the middle of the night, she would suddenly wake up screaming and crying because of nightmares. She would lock herself in the room alone. Whenever someone walked around outside the door, she would be so scared that she would hide under the bed and tremble. Once, when Alice drank red wine, she looked at the scarlet liquid as if she was looking at blood. Natalia was so agitated that she started crying. When she saw ropes, iron things, especially iron chains, she would subconsciously hide far away. After being tortured by nightmares for a long time, Natalia had a high fever and lay in bed for a long time. Gong Jie had to accompany her all the time. Therefore, he rarely came to Hua Jin's place. After Hua Jin's fever subsided, he recovered very quickly and was soon able to get out of bed and walk around. When he heard that Natalia had a fever, he wanted to go and take a look. Alice advised him not to go. Why? Because when she sees you, she feels fear. Fear? Hua Jin didn't understand. Why? I don't visit Natalia much anymore. Because you, me, and her are all victims of hijacking. When she sees you, she will think of the time when she was kidnapped and the torture and fright she had to endure. Moreover, she's currently running a high fever and is unconscious. If you go, she might hallucinate that she's still in the Divine Hall sect and hasn't been rescued yet. When she was kidnapped, Natalia had been too desperate. She was so desperate that she felt that they were done for. Even after they returned to Darkwind Island, Natalia continued to ask Alice if she was dreaming, if she hadn't woken up yet. If she had woken up, would they still be in the hands of the believers of the Temple of Light? Would they still be in that dark, damp, and devoid of freedom in that abandoned basement? Every time this happened, Alice would feel very anxious. Gong Jie is with her now. You don't have to worry too much. He will take good care of her. Alice paused for a moment before saying, Shou Jie has changed a lot. He actually knows how to take care of people. When Hua Jin heard the name Gong Jie, his eyes flashed slightly. Chapter 44-65. Alice was an astute person. When she saw Hua Jin's strange expression, she quickly detected it. What's wrong? Why did your expression change when Gong Jie was mentioned? Hua Jin touched his face. Did I? Yes. Could it be that Gong Jie had mentioned that matter to her? Hua Jin asked indirectly, did Gong Jie say anything to you? Oh. Alice's interest was piqued. Do you think he would say anything to me? Hua Jin's expression suddenly became uneasy. How could he have forgotten that Alice was a psychologist? She was the best at reading a person's mind. He felt like he was completely naked in front of her. Even his body was transparent. Whatever he was thinking in his heart was completely seen through by her. Hua Jin, you've become very strange. Could it be that there's a secret between you and Shoro Jie? No. Hua Jin suddenly denied agitatedly. However, the more agitated he was, the more suspicious Alice found him. Yo-Yo suddenly walked over with a drink and sat down beside Hua Jin. Uncle Hua Jin, are you feeling better? Much better, Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo suddenly looked at him as if she had seen a ghost. Hua Jin felt even worse. What's wrong? Is there something strange on my face? No. It's just, why is your face so red? Hua Jin was speechless. Alice muttered, if there's something on your mind, just say it. You can't hide your thoughts at all. Everything is written on your face. Something must have happened between you and Shoro Jie. Otherwise, you wouldn't be like this. I think Shoro Jie has been acting strange recently. Yo-Yo looked at Hua Jin and then at Alice. She lowered her head and obediently sucked on the cola through the straw. Hua Jin finally couldn't take it anymore. He finished the red wine in his glass in one gulp and looked at Alice with a flushed face. Alice held the wine glass. She was so frightened by his serious expression that she didn't dare to move. Let me ask you. Please go ahead. Gong Jie, his sexual orientation, Phut. Yo-Yo couldn't hold it in and spat it all over his face. Hua Jin closed his eyes from the spray, and his face was covered in coke. Fortunately, he had a good temper, but the boy still got up and hurriedly wiped him with a handkerchief. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Alice held back her laughter and asked patiently, why are you asking this? Gong Jie's sexual orientation? What's the matter? Yo-Yo was also curious. Don't tell me. Uncle confessed to you? Hua Jin was speechless. Seeing Hua Jin's face getting redder and redder, Yo-Yo was glad that she didn't have cola in her mouth. Otherwise, she would have spat it all over Hua Jin's face. Ha 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 ha. Alice couldn't hold it in anymore. She slapped the table and laughed. So that's the problem. Hua Jin, tell me, did Gong Jie confess to you? Facing Alice and Yo-Yo's big curious eyes, Hua Jin wanted to vomit blood. What kind of exciting thing is this? He really confessed. Alice and Yo-Yo clapped excitedly, ignoring Hua Jin's darkened face. Hua Jin almost roared out loud. What was this worth clapping about? You don't understand. Alice smiled in relief. There was another reason why she and Yo-Yo were so excited. Alice, on the other hand, liked Gong Jie. This was something that everyone in Hurricane City had a tacit understanding about. Chapter 4466. However, if the person Gong Jie liked was a man, she would feel much better. So, Gong Jie liked Hua Jin. Why did she feel so happy? On the other hand, Yo-Yo was happy that her uncle's marriage was finally settled. Plus, everyone could see Gong Jie's feelings for Hua Jin. Although it was hazy, it was still a psychological foundation. Shoro Jie is really special to you. Alice said, no matter who it is, other than Yun Shusha, Yo-Yo, and Xiaochen, Natalia, I really can't think of anyone he would work so hard for. Hua Jin blushed even more. Is that so? Wow, your face is even redder, Yo-Yo teased. If I didn't know better, I would have thought that you had blusher on. Hua Jin couldn't help but want to punch him. Alice said to Hua Jin, what about you? What do you think of Gong Jie? Thoughts? What thoughts? Nothing much, Ayo. Yo-Yo nudged Hua Jin's arm and started to praise her uncle. What's wrong with my uncle? He's rich, powerful, and handsome. The girls who are chasing after him would line up from here to Siberia. You should be happy that such a man has taken a liking to you. Hua Jin gritted his teeth. I'm not a girl. Actually, your problem is very simple. Alice showed the demeanor of a relationship guru. She raised a finger as if she was going to point out everything. Feeling nervous all of a sudden, he gulped and asked seriously, "What's the problem? Between men, it's just a matter of who's at the top and who's at the bottom." Hua Jin's mind was in a mess. He had thought that Alice would give some sort of constructive speech, but in the end, it was this. Yo-Yo was confused. What do you mean by who's on top and who's on the bottom? Why can't I understand? Hua Jin covered his mouth with an ashen face. Don't ask such questions. This Alice. Yo-Yo was still around. Was she trying to lead Yo-Yo astray? Alice said, Hua Jin, don't struggle anymore. Just give in to Shoro Jie. Yes. Yo-Yo nodded solemnly. Let's do as Uncle says. Follow your sister. Hua Jin gulped down a mouthful of red wine in a fit of anger. Two pig teammates. You've just recovered. Don't drink too much. Alice suddenly looked at him with a pitiful expression. I think the reason why you're so worried is because of a sense of powerlessness. What sense of powerlessness? That is, Alice's gaze became even more sympathetic. When you're with Shoro Jie, he's obviously on top. You can only be on the bottom. On top. On the bottom? She suddenly blurted out a few unfamiliar terms. Yo-Yo was curious. What do you mean? What's on top and bottom? Hua Jin couldn't take it anymore and covered his mouth again. Don't ask such questions. With that, Hua Jin gulped down another mouthful of red wine. Alice and Yo-Yo looked at each other, then their gazes fell on Hua Jin. At night, Gong Jie went back to his room after coaxing Natalia to sleep. However, just as he reached the door of the room, he saw a figure leaning against the wall. When he got closer, he saw that the figure was Hua Jin. Gong Jie's lips stiffened. What are you doing here? Hua Jin turned around unsteadily. When he heard the voice, he straightened his body with difficulty. It's you. Chapter 4467. Why are you here? Hua Jin pointed at him, turned around, and knocked on the door. This is my room. It was obvious that this guy was drunk. Gong Jie cast a sidelong glance at him and raised an eyebrow. Drunk. Drunk. Hua Jin was tongue-tied. Huh? What did you say? You're really arrogant. Hua Jin poked his face with his finger. This action was no doubt akin to stroking a tiger's whiskers. The tiger was still looking at him with his eyebrows raised. He was indifferent to his provocative behavior. Hua Jin poked his cheeks. Gong Jie's skin was very tender, and he even took better care of it than he did. What skincare products are you using? Why is your skin so good? Are you done? Gong Jie stood up straight. Hua Jin could only reach his shoulders. If he didn't stand up straight, he could only reach his chest. He seemed to feel that he wasn't as tall as him and didn't have the confidence to speak. Hence, he tiptoed and puffed out his chest. Why are you so tall? Squat down a little. Gong Jie snorted and lowered his head to look at his eyes. What do you want? To hit you. Dong. Hua Jin's fist landed on his head. It wasn't heavy, but it was definitely not light either. However, for Gong Jie, it was as if his fist had landed on cotton. His alcohol tolerance didn't seem to be good. Gong Jie tried to bear with it and pushed him away. When he was about to open the door, Hua Jin blocked him. What? What are you doing? Hua Jin tilted his head and pointed at him. What do you want to do in my room? Gong Jie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He reminded him, this is my room. You want to sleep in my room? This is my room. Gong Jie's patience had run out. He opened the door and walked in with him. Hua Jin was carried into the room like a little chick. He struggled for a while, but Gong Jie did not allow him to struggle at all. He directly carried him into the bathroom. In no time at all, they stripped him of his clothes and threw him into the bathtub. Hua Jin slumped in the bathtub in defeat and did not move an inch. Gong Jie walked out of the bathroom, went to the wardrobe, and took out 2 clean bathrobes. Just as he walked into the bathroom, he saw that Hua Jin had already fallen into the bathtub. Unknowingly, the water had already covered his face. The water entered his nose and throat, causing him to cough a few times. Gong Jie's gaze turned cold. He rushed over and hugged his body a little. You're so drunk. He was dead drunk. How much did he drink? He didn't even know that he choked on the bathwater. Hua Jin's head was very dizzy. After saying I for a long time, his head leaned on Gongjie's shoulder with a thud, and he stopped moving. He was like a salted fish that had struggled for a long time and finally had a power outage. Gongjie tried to bear with it. He had not fully recovered yet, but he had drunk so much. Gongjie had no choice but to fish him out. He covered him with a large bath towel and hugged him. Dawn. Hua Jin woke up because of a hangover. As he had been fasting for so long, his stomach was already weak. Coupled with the fact that he had drunk so much, his stomach hurt badly. It was fine if he did not wake up, but when he woke up, he saw Gongjie's sleeping face right in front of him. Chapter 4468. The two of them were so close that he could even smell the fragrance of the body lotion on his body. Hua Jin cautiously lifted the blanket and saw that he was also wrapped in a towel. His head was hurting even more. He seemed to have gotten drunk last night. He was so drunk that he could only remember walking along the corridor unsteadily. He couldn't recognize where his room was. The castle was too big. He was like a lonely soul wandering around. However, he couldn't remember what happened after that. Why was he in Gongjie's room and on his bed? The scariest thing was that both of them were only wrapped in a towel. What happened after that? Could it be? Hua Jin was so scared that he burped. The smell of alcohol from his breath hit Gongjie's face. Gongjie was awakened by the smell of alcohol. When he opened his eyes, the two of them looked at each other. Hua Jin was even more embarrassed. Was it too late for him to close his eyes and pretend to be asleep? You're awake. Gongjie sat up and held his forehead. Are you sober? I should be awake. Was I very drunk last night? Before Hua Jin could finish his sentence, Gongjie looked at him coldly. What do you think? Hua Jin suddenly felt guilty. Your body hasn't recovered and you drank so much. Were these words considered as showing concern for him? Hua Jin sat up and patted his face. However, he deliberately kept a distance from him. Gongjie looked at him and couldn't help but mock him. Now you know to keep a distance from me. You weren't so reserved when you threw yourself at me yesterday. Throw myself at me? Hua Jin resisted the urge to scream and covered his face. What happened between us yesterday? Gongjie heard and asked, what do you want to happen? I don't want anything to happen at all. What shouldn't have happened has happened. TSK. Hua Jin sucked in a breath of cold air with lingering fear. Did it really happen? Could it be that he was beastly and ate him up yesterday? Wait, that's impossible, right? Since everything that shouldn't have happened had already happened, then why didn't he feel anything at all? Could it be that he was an acupuncture mushroom? That was impossible. Hua Jin couldn't help but glance at a certain part of his body. Gongjie's gaze turned even colder. What are you thinking about? Nothing. Hua Jin retracted his gaze in embarrassment and didn't say another word. The atmosphere was very awkward. Gongjie lay down. He hadn't slept well the whole night, so he planned to make up for it later. This time, Hua Jin was even more embarrassed. I didn't do anything. Gongjie interrupted him. I didn't say that. Hua Jin asked in a roundabout manner, did I say anything nonsense yesterday? Yes, but I don't understand. For example, you said that you want to be on top. Hua Jin almost vomited blood on the blanket. He wanted to scream. It was indeed true that drinking would spoil things. Did he really say that? What do you mean by on top and on top? It was fine if Hua Jin didn't mention it. Now that he did, Gongjie was very curious about the meaning of on top and on top. Hua Jin was trembling. He wished that he had a tool that could turn back time. He only hoped that none of this had happened. However, didn't he know the meaning of on top and on top? Chapter 4469. Didn't he like men? In that case, he should know the meaning of these two words. Seeing that Hua Jin was silent, Gongjie asked again, you said that you want to be on top. What do you mean by that? Hua Jin's face turned red. It was better not to explain this question. I'm talking nonsense. Just forget about it. Hua Jin deliberately changed the topic. Gong Jie, what? Do you have some hidden illness that you can't talk about? The two of them were lying on the same bed, but nothing happened. Moreover, from what Yo-Yo and Alice had said, Gong Jie didn't have any women or men around him for so many years. Could it be that there was some problem in that area? Hua Jin's back was facing Gong Jie, so he didn't realize that Gong Jie had suddenly stretched out an arm and grabbed his waist. The next second, Hua Jin felt his body bouncing on the bed. Then, Gong Jie pressed him under his body and looked at him meaningfully. Are you doubting my ability? Gong Jie sneered and said, it seems that you were hoping for something to happen last night. No. Were you hoping that I would do something to you? Hua Jin was so angry that his face turned red. No. I was just concerned. Concerned? Alice said that you didn't have any women or men around you for so many years. Therefore, any normal person would be concerned about whether you have some problem in that area. Concerned? In what capacity are you concerned about me? Gong Jie was interested. Hua Jin was even more embarrassed. Gong Jie's smile was devilishly charming. Whether I have any problem, do you want to verify it yourself? As he said that, his handsome face got closer and closer. That deep gaze seemed to suck his soul into the abyss. Verify it himself? There's no need for that, right? Before he could finish his sentence, Hua Jin could clearly feel a change in Gong Jie's body. He was obviously scared to death. You feel it? Gong Jie smirked. So you like the strong one? Don't like abstinence? Do you have a masochistic physique? I like to be abused. You're the masochist. Sorry, I'm a recognized S-type. Gong Jie leaned close to his ear and whispered, I'm the only one who bullies others. No one has ever dared to bully me. You. Get up. I'm going back to my room. If I let you go like this, wouldn't it be even more obvious that there's something wrong with me? Men hated it the most when others questioned this aspect of the issue. Gong Jie felt that it was time to let Hua Jin personally test what kind of problem he had in bed. Gong Jie. Hua Jin suddenly called his name. Gong Jie was stunned. What is it? I want to ask you. Hua Jin mustered up his courage. What you said to me last time, were you serious or just teasing me? What did I say? You said that when we're together. Hua Jin clenched his fists. Are you serious? Gong Jie smiled. It seems that my attitude wasn't clear enough. What? Before Hua Jin could question him, Gong Jie suddenly lowered his head and kissed him gently on the lips. Hua Jin's body stiffened and he didn't dare to move. Chapter 4470. What surprised Hua Jin was not his kiss. It was Gong Jie's kiss that his body instinctively welcomed. Why did it turn out this way? Why did he indulge himself so much and fall into his precious tenderness? Hua Jin closed his eyes helplessly. For a moment, he could not figure out his wavering heart. Gong Jie was a man. He was also a man. In this world, it was not unusual for men and women to fall in love with each other. Now that society was more open, some people were born to like the same sex. This was innate. However, it was obvious that he and Gong Jie were not born to like men. If they really liked men, they would not have feelings for women. Could it be that they were bisexual? Hua Jin's mind was blank, so much so that he did not notice when Gong Jie left his lips. When he finally regained his senses from the kiss, Gong Jie could not help bursting into laughter when he saw the confused look on his nephew's face. Why do you have such an expression? What expression? Facing death with equanimity, a heroic sacrifice. Hua Jin rubbed his face with his hands and simply covered his face. How embarrassing. When Gong Jie saw this, he laughed and reached out to push his hands away, forcing him to look at him. Hua Jin, listen to me. I'll tell you, Gong Jie exhaled softly and said to him, it's not because you're a man that I like you. It's because you're Hua Jin that I want you. Like men? Like women? Why should I suppress my feelings because of my gender? So what if the person I like is a man? Some people think that this is a very disgusting thing. Gong Jie sneered. Why should I care about other people's opinions? What does other people think of me have to do with me? His arrogant tone was simply insufferably arrogant. Such boldness was worthy of the name Gong Jie. Hua Jin stared at him, unable to regain his senses for a long time. It's not because you're a man that I like you. It's because you're Hua Jin that I want you. For the whole day, Hua Jin sat on the edge of the beach and stared blankly at the waves washing the beach. Yo-Yo walked over to him with 2 iced coconuts and handed one to him. Here. Iced coconut. Thank you. Hua Jin took the coconut and bit it. However, his eyes were still lifeless as he looked in a certain direction. Yo-Yo waved her hand in front of his eyes, but there was no reaction. Gong Jie's words kept replaying in his mind and his heart was greatly shaken. Arrogant, domineering, insufferably arrogant. He was both envious and yearning for Gong Jie. Such a proud man. He was as free as the wind. No one could restrain him. Yo-Yo said coldly, "You've been sitting here for the whole day." Hua Jin finally came back to his senses. "You're here. You just realized that I'm here? Who did you take the coconut from just now?" Hua Jin lowered his head and looked at the coconut in his hand. He was confused. Where did the coconut come from? Yo-Yo looked at him with a "you're hopeless" expression. "You look like you've lost your soul. What's wrong?" Hua Jin smiled helplessly. "I was distracted just now." Chapter 4471. Yo-Yo, I have a question that I don't quite understand. Hua Jin gazed blankly at the horizon and asked impassively, "What is love like? What is the feeling of liking someone?" Yo-Yo was taken aback. He held his chin helplessly and the corners of his lips twitched. "You're actually asking a 10-year-old child what love is?" Hua Jin was speechless. "Why don't I bring my grandpa here? He should know what love is. I heard that he and Grandma are very much in love. He should be qualified to answer your question." "Wait." Hua Jin pulled him back. He was scared out of his wits. "Why did you bring your grandpa here?" If he knew that his son liked him, he might turn green with anger. "Because I can't answer your question." "Then don't answer it." "But I saw that you were so distracted when you answered the question. It was as if you had lost your soul." Yo-Yo sat down beside him. "Are you worried about your relationship with Uncle?" Hua Jin didn't think much of it. "What can happen between me and him? I don't understand." Yo-Yo continued to rest his chin on his hand and sighed helplessly. "Love is our own business. Why do we need to invite others to comment on it? Shouldn't we do what we want to do? Do you need others to give you the courage and reason to love someone when you're in love? Could it be that you can love whoever others want you to love, and you can't love whoever others don't want you to love? Don't you have your own will?" Yo-Yo was obviously a child, but the words that came out of his mouth stunned Hua Jin for a long time. "If I like someone, I don't care what others think. As long as I've decided on someone, I don't care what others think." Yo-Yo's words revealed a charisma that didn't match his age. Hua Jin said in a daze, "You're indeed Gong Jie's nephew. Your styles are exactly the same." It was simply tyrannical. "What if that person doesn't like you?" Yo-Yo laughed when she heard this. "How is this possible? I'm so outstanding. Why wouldn't that person like me?" His logic was exactly the same as Gong Jie's. Hua Jin hesitated. "Then, what if I'm not that outstanding?" "Then work hard to become more outstanding." Yo-Yo stretched out her arms and lay on the beach. She closed her eyes and said, "The world of adults is really complicated." Perhaps, it was because this world was complicated by the adults. Actually, feelings are very simple, but there are people who want to be well matched in terms of social status, and there are people who want so-called fairness. Scheming against each other and deceiving each other. There were so many reasons why they had to be so calculative about their relationship. Wasn't liking someone very simple? Moreover, I feel that you also have feelings for Uncle. It's just that you haven't noticed it yet. How can you tell? As long as you see my uncle, your face will turn red and you will become very restrained. That's because you're afraid. Is it really because you're afraid? Yo-Yo looked at him with disdain. Isn't it too sad that a person doesn't even have the courage to face his own feelings? His words were like a basin of cold water pouring over her head. Chapter 4472. Unknowingly, Yo-Yo had already left the beach. In the blink of an eye, it was already dusk. The sun was setting in the west. Hua Jin lay on the spot where Yo-Yo had been lying. His mind was filled with Yo-Yo's words. Isn't it too sad that a person doesn't even have the courage to face his own feelings? Did he really have feelings for Gongjie? Was it fear or admiration? Hua Jin admitted that he did admire Gongjie. But was admiration the same as love? He really couldn't understand. Yun Shusha didn't know that Hua Jin had met with an accident. Gongjie didn't tell her because he didn't want her to worry. After the incident, Gongjie called Yun Shusha and told her about it. Yun Shusha was scared out of her wits when she found out. Is Hua Jin all right? Gongjie was a little speechless when he heard this. Sis, why are you worried about him first? Haven't you thought about me? Aren't you fine now? Gongjie said aggrievedly, I'm injured. Injured? Is it serious? Yun Shusha's tone suddenly became nervous. Shou-Jie, don't scare me. How did you get injured? Sure enough, the crying child gets candy. This saying isn't without reason. I'm not made of steel. I'm made of flesh and blood. If Hua Jin can get injured, why can't I? Yun Shusha felt guilty when she heard this. I'm sorry. In my heart, Shou-Jie has always been indestructible. I didn't expect you to get injured. Is it serious? It's fine. It's just a small injury. I was just joking. I just felt uneasy. Yun Shusha heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. You're scaring me again. I was wrong, sis. Actually, it's my fault too. I can't neglect my concern for you just because you're Gongjie. Yun Shusha smiled. Shou-Jie, I miss you. The words I miss you made Gongjie's heart burst with joy. However, Gongjie had always been introverted. Even if he was happy, he did not show it on his face. I miss you too, sister. If I have time, I'll fly to Haifeng Island. No need. When the time comes, I will visit you with my father. All right. Ever since she got over Gong Shaoying, Yun Shusha would often talk to him on the phone. Yun Shusha had no resentment towards her father. It was just that he had hurt her mother and Yo-Yo. However, Gong Shaoying was very sincere about it, so Yun Shusha was relieved. The reunion between father and daughter could be considered as fulfilling one of her wishes. Sometimes, Yun Shusha felt that she was too blessed. She had a husband who doted on her like a daughter, 2 sons who protected her like a princess, a younger brother who doted on her, and now, a father who loved her dearly. She was really more doted on than Yu Yao. Sis, I have something to announce to you. Gongjie suddenly said over the phone. Yun Shusha came back to her senses. Okay, go ahead. I like Hua Jin. Gongjie raised his eyebrows and smiled. I want to be with him. Yun Shusha was slightly stunned, but she did not show too much shock. Instead, she asked tentatively, You're not joking again, are you? I'm serious. Yun Shusha pondered for a moment. This matter was too sudden, but before this, it was not untraceable. She could tell that Gongjie's attitude towards Hua Jin was very special. Chapter 4473. However, since Gongjie was serious about this matter, Yun Shusha naturally expressed her support. If you really like him, then as your sister, of course, I wish you happiness. In her opinion, no matter who Gongjie liked, whether it was a man or a woman, as long as he liked her, she would support him. Just like back then, when he found out that Yun Shusha was going to marry the Mu family, which opposed the Gong family, Gongjie still supported her unconditionally. Although Gongjie did not like Mu Yaja very much from the beginning. But for her sake, Gongjie tried his best to build a relationship with this brother-in-law of his. Then, what about Hua Jin? How does he feel about you? He doesn't like him. Yun Shusha said. Then you said you want to be with him. It's only a matter of time. Shou-Jie, you can't be so overbearing. You can't force yourself on him. He obviously doesn't like you, so you can't force him. He dares. Could she say that from a certain point of view, her brother's personality was very similar to someone else's? Are you that overbearing? It's SOSO. Mu Yaja is also very overbearing. Otherwise, how did he manage to get you? Yun Shusha's face instantly turned as red as a persimmon. At the side, Mu Yaja was originally reading the newspaper when he was inexplicably implicated. When he heard Gongjie's words, He snorted unhappily. Don't compare me to you. Brother-in-law is also here? Yes. Yun Shusha thought that Gong Jie had said something bad about Mu Yaja. Feeling guilty, she immediately said, your brother-in-law won't stoop to your level. If you didn't like him so much, I might not have approved of him as my brother-in-law. Yun Shusha was speechless. The smell of gunpowder was very strong. Mu Yaja put down the newspaper. The old cadre reached out his hand and took the phone. You have something against brother-in-law? Of course. How are you worthy of my sister? How am I not worthy? Chemph. I won't lower myself to your level. Gong Jie glanced at him haughtily before asking nonchalantly, speaking of which, what tricks did you use to trick my sister into joining you? Mu Yaja raised his eyebrows. Why? Do you want to learn from me? His goal had been seen through. Gong Jie cleared his throat awkwardly, but he still showed a look of disapproval. It's definitely not some honorable method. It doesn't matter whether it's open or not. What's important is that your sister is now my wife. Gong Jie was speechless again. Yun Shusha watched coldly from the side. Although he knew that Gong Jie and Mu Yaja seemed to be getting along well on the surface, but in fact, they were secretly opposing each other. However, there was no need for them to be so hostile towards each other. The way they communicated with each other was more crude than the last. Since you're so humble, I'll teach you. Gong Jie actually listened to her seriously. Push him down. If once isn't enough, then do it twice. There's no such thing as a relationship that can't be sublimated in bed. The only way to raise the temperature of a relationship is to extend it from the body to the mind. Yun Shusha couldn't take it anymore. She snatched the phone and covered Mu Yaja's face with a pillow. What are you up to? Are you trying to lead my brother astray? Mu Yaja took down the pillow and looked a little confused. Isn't that the case? Your brother is an adult and a man. Do you still treat him as a child? Chapter 4474. Mu Yaja shrugged, picked up the newspaper, and started to read it. Yun Shusha blushed. She looked at the phone screen and saw Gong Jie looking at her thoughtfully. Ah! Ignore your brother-in-law's words. Gong Jie pondered for a moment. I understand. What do you understand? The fastest way to warm up a relationship. Gong Jie's lips curled into a smile. Yun Shusha felt her hair stand on end. After ending the call, Yun Shusha raised the phone and questioned Mu Yaja bitterly. Look at how bad you've taught Shoro Jie. Mu Yaja was unmoved. He turned his head and pretended to be dead. Don't think that it'll be fine if you just pretend to be dead. Yun Shusha put down the phone and picked up a cushion to hit him. How can you say such shameless things? Mu Yaja put down the newspaper and snatched the cushion from Yun Shusha's hands. He flipped over and easily pinned her down on the sofa. Leaning in close to her face, the man's lips curled into a smile as he breathed out, Madam, did I say something wrong? Besides the soul, the compatibility of the body is also very important. Mu Yaja spoke in a serious manner. She blushed in anger. Where did you learn such dirty jokes from? How can you come up with them so easily? This is the truth. Mu Yaja pecked her lips lightly and said meaningfully, I think that we don't have to interfere too much in the relationship between Gong Jie and Hua Jin. Chem. But, what are you worried about? Yun Shusha was a little distressed. I'm worried. You don't have to worry about that. Gong Jie will take care of it. Mu Yaja said intimately in her neck, now, you just need to take care of things between us. Hua Jin returned to the castle from the dining hall. He walked up the stairs to his room and pushed the door open, only to see Gong Jie occupying his big bed. Hua Jin was shocked. If he hadn't confirmed that this was his room, he would have thought that he was drunk and went to the wrong room. You're back. Why are you here? Gong Jie lay on his side. I'll sleep here tonight. This is my room. And then, if you want to sleep, go back to your room. I'll sleep here. Gong Jie said rudely, I'll sleep with you tonight. It seemed that Gong Jie really wanted to take Mu Yaja's advice as a reference. Hua Jin was completely petrified. What was this guy up to again? He gulped and turned around. Then I'll sleep in your room. Gong Jie said slowly, I promise you, you won't be able to walk out of this room. Hua Jin couldn't take it anymore and turned around. Tell me, what's your purpose? To sleep with you. It was an overbearing and rude answer. Full marks. Hua Jin almost had a heart attack from the shock. If he knew that this was Mu Yaja's idea to Gong Jie, he would be so angry that his face would change shape. I think that the progress between us is too slow. Gong Jie lay on the bed freely. Every word he said was enough to make Hua Jin shudder. I intend to speed up the progress between us. You must be crazy. Hua Jin walked to the bed and started to drive him away. Get up and go back to your room to sleep. However, he had neglected to keep a distance from Gong Jie. The next second, his arm was pulled and he was the one in control. Chapter 4475. Hua Jin replied, I don't want to. Did this guy come here with the intention of eating him alive? Don't come so close to me. Hua Jin felt that his breathing had become erratic, and it was extremely chaotic. Why? It was quiet all around. Gong Jie could feel Hua Jin's heartbeat quickening. The two faces inched closer to each other. Hua Jin's heart was about to jump out of his throat. At this moment, the door was suddenly pushed open. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen barged in one after another. Hua Jin, bad news. Yo-Yo walked in and saw the scene on the bed. Gong Jie pinned Hua Jin under his body, looking like a tiger eyeing its prey. Hua Jin, on the other hand, looked over in horror. When he saw the two little lads rushing in, his face turned pale with fright. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen were dumbfounded. What the hell was going on? Uncle, why didn't you knock before coming in? Gong Jie raised his eyebrows in displeasure. It's like this. Yo-Yo recalled his original intention and hurriedly explained, Natalia. Hearing that it was about Natalia, Gong Jie and Hua Jin became anxious. What's wrong with her? She's crying a lot. Hua Jin and Gong Jie rushed to Natalia's room and saw that Alice had arrived as well. The room was in a mess. Natalia was curled up in a corner, shivering. When she saw Hua Jin, Natalia cried and threw herself into his arms. You're not dead. That's great. That's great. I thought you were dead. Alice looked at the scene with mixed feelings. She had thought that Hua Jin's appearance in front of Natalia would trigger her memories of being imprisoned in the sanctuary. Therefore, she tried to persuade Hua Jin not to come and see her. However, Hua Jin did not appear for a long time. Natalia thought that Hua Jin was dead and that everyone had been hiding it from her. She had nightmares. She often dreamed that Hua Jin was lying on the bed, covered by a white cloth. He was no longer breathing. She was heartbroken and woke up crying. Seeing that he was still alive, Natalia broke down and cried. The worries and suspicions that had been plaguing him all this time had finally vanished. You're still alive. That's great. That day, Gong Jie carried Hua Jin on the boat. During the long critical period, Natalia overheard from Alice that Hua Jin's condition. She thought that Hua Jin was probably dead, so she had been suppressing it. The terrifying memories, coupled with the accumulated worries, finally crushed her. Hua Jin did not appear for so many days. Only Gong Jie and Yo-Yo accompanied her. She did not dare to ask about Hua Jin. She was afraid that she would get an answer she did not want. The nightmares that she had been suppressing and suspecting were the last straw that broke her back. Natalia broke down and smashed everything in the house. She felt that there was no reason for her to still be alive. During the days when she was imprisoned in the sanctuary, if it were not for Hua Jin and Alice taking care of her, she would not have been able to survive until now. Therefore, Natalia felt guilty and thought that she was the culprit behind Hua Jin's death. Now that she saw Hua Jin alive, Natalia thought that she was dreaming. Am I dreaming? Natalia held his face and sobbed. Is it real? Are you really still alive? Hua Jin did not know whether to laugh or cry, but he was also filled with emotions. Chapter 4476. In the end, Natalia had been on tenterhooks all day. Apart from the trauma of the kidnapping, she was also worried about him. He had never imagined that he was so important to Natalia. Alice said to Hua Jin, "Stay with Natalia tonight. I can tell that she's worried about you. It's like she's lost her soul." Hua Jin nodded and turned to look at Gong Jie. "What about you?" "Me." Gong Jie said, "I'll stay too." Alice said, "Okay, then." She said to Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen, "Let's go." After the three of them walked out of the room and closed the door, Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen had different expressions on their faces. Alice glanced at them. "What's wrong? You look weird." "Alice, let me tell you. Yo-Yo and I saw a ghost just now." Xiao Chen walked up to Alice and said with a horrified expression, "When Yo-Yo and I entered Hua Jin's room just now, we saw Uncle on top of him." The position was indescribable. It seemed like Yo-Yo and Alice looked at each other. No one had mentioned to him that Hua Jin and Gong Jie had an ambiguous relationship. Obviously, Xiao Chen was the last one to be kept in the dark. Obviously, he had not recovered from the shock of seeing Hua Jin and Gong Jie on the bed. Could it be? Xiao Chen crossed his arms and said, "Uncle and Hua Jin were playing some kind of sumo game?" Yo-Yo was speechless. Alice said, "You can be more imaginative." "What else could it be?" Xiao Chen looked at Yo-Yo. "Yo-Yo, what do you think?" "Uncle likes Hua Jin." No, that's impossible. Uncle has always been a straight man. How could he like men? That's just his way of doing things. It doesn't mean that it's a matter of sexual orientation. Besides, who said that men can only like women? Isn't it normal for men to fall in love with each other? Xiao Chen said, "I think Uncle should like women." "You know it again. Xiao Chen, are you a god? Do you know everything?" Yo-Yo poked his head and said, "Besides, what does it have to do with you whether Uncle likes men or women?" Xiao Chen came to his senses and said, "That's right. What does that have to do with me? However, you can't just make such wild guesses. It's not like we made a random guess." Yo-Yo and Alice said in unison, "This is his own intention." "What do you mean? The day before yesterday or the day before yesterday? I forgot, but Hua Jin seemed to have run over and said that Uncle confessed to him." Phut, Xiao Chen almost vomited blood. "Are you serious? Are you kidding me? It's definitely not a joke." Xiao Chen was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. In the room, Natalia had taken a shower and eaten. The room had been cleaned up. Hua Jin coaxed her into bed and sat on either side of the bed with Gong Jie. He urged her, "You haven't slept well these few days, right? Hurry up and go to sleep." "Then, what about you?" Natalia looked at Hua Jin and then at Gong Jie. "Will you leave after I fall asleep?" Hua Jin and Gong Jie looked at each other and shook their heads. Gong Jie said, "We won't leave. We'll stay here with you." I don't believe you." Chapter 44-77. Natalia was afraid that they would leave quietly after she fell asleep, so she patted the bed. "Lie down and sleep together." The bed was very big. It was 2 meters wide and 2 meters long. It was not small at all for the three of them to sleep on. Hua Jin knew what Natalia was worried about, so he lay down obediently. Gong Jie and Hua Jin lay on either side of her. Only then did Natalia feel much more at ease. Nestled in Gong Jie's arms, Natalia murmured, "I miss home." She missed the home that only belonged to Gong Jie, Hua Jin, and her. This place was so unfamiliar. She was surrounded by bad memories. She could not sleep well. "When you're better, we'll go back. I'm already well nourished." Natalia pouted. "I want to go home." "Okay, sleep first, okay?" Hua Jin's ability to coax children was already top-notch. Natalia said, "Give me a good-night kiss." Hua Jin gently kissed her forehead. When Gong Jie saw this, he felt indignant. "I want one too." Hua Jin was speechless. He thought coldly in his heart, "Are you a freaking child? You want a good-night kiss? Aren't you childish?" Gong Jie also stared at him meaningfully and even moved his handsome face closer. He was obviously being shameless. Natalia was amused. Haha. Hua Jin was forced to do so, but he still satisfied him and kissed him lightly on the forehead. Gong Jie was still not satisfied. That's it. That's it. Sleep." Hua Jin blushed and lay down. He hugged Natalia and closed his eyes. Natalia fell asleep very quickly. Not long after, Hua Jin was also very sleepy and fell asleep very quickly. Gong Jie, however, could not fall asleep. He propped his upper body up and laid on his side. He held his head and quietly looked at the two people lying beside him. Hua Jin and Natalia slept in each other's arms. Both of them slept very quietly. Natalia's arm was placed on Hua Jin's chest. Under the moonlight, this scene was inexplicably heartwarming. The next day, when Hua Jin woke up, Gong Jie was sleeping soundly with Natalia in his arms. He walked to the window and pulled the curtains open. The long-awaited sunlight finally poured in. The whole room was much brighter. He left the room quietly, and when he went out, he unexpectedly met Alice. Hua Jin. I heard Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen. Hua Jin. His heart felt stifled. And these two little brats. Don't listen to their nonsense. Actually, there's nothing wrong with admitting it. After a pause, Alice's expression became serious again. Today's news is out. It's about the sanctuary. As she spoke, Alice handed the tablet to Hua Jin. Hua Jin took the tablet. Many of the world's authoritative media outlets reported wantonly. The news of the sanctuary's mass suicide that night shook the world. Such a brutal mass suicide case was extremely rare. Undoubtedly, this explosive news lasted for a long time. At the same time, the war in East Africa officially began. The International Peacekeeping Organization of the United Nations had already begun to intervene. More than 1,000 believers voluntarily took hydrogen chloride and died within seconds. Chapter 4478. Alice said, Hua Jin, the International Federation already knew that you were one of the survivors at the scene. Some reporters wanted to interview you, but they were all blocked. During this time, other than here, don't go anywhere else. Why? I suspect that there are still believers left in the sacred hall. They might already be looking for your whereabouts, which is bad for you. Hua Jin, on the other hand, was baffled. Why are those believers looking for my whereabouts? What does this have to do with me? Because you are the holy son chosen by the leader of the sacred hall. Those believers believe that as long as they complete the ritual, their leader will obtain eternal life. That's ridiculous. Hua Jin finally couldn't help it. I'm innocent. Those believers have been brainwashed. In their minds, Jim is God, and you are the holy son chosen by God. After completing the ritual, your will and spirit will make Jim's soul more indestructible, and those believers who follow him will also obtain eternal life. Hua Jin couldn't help but think about it in horror. I suspect that those believers who pretended to take the medicine are not repentant or have thought it through, but stubborn evil cult members. They must be sparing no effort to track your whereabouts. Hua Jin nodded lightly. Okay. You stay in Darkwind Island, don't go anywhere for the time being. Alice said again, Hurricane will send mercenaries to track down the whereabouts of those believers, eliminate them, and hand them over to the International Court for trial. Those believers were not caught. No. Only one was caught. We only managed to capture one of them. The other 5 seem to have escaped and have disappeared without a trace. Hua Jin looked at the news displayed on the tablet with a heavy heart. Alice asked again, what was the situation like that day? You haven't mentioned it to me. Why did Jim choose you to be the Holy Son? Hua Jin heard this and couldn't help but sneer. You think Jim created the so-called doctrine to save those believers? He only selfishly wanted to take the money and property of those believers. In other words, even he himself knew that there was no such thing as the Temple of Light, and there was no such thing as eternal life. It was just a crooked practice that he had instilled in his followers. He needed a reason and an excuse. It is said that Jim referenced the ancient burial system of Zed country. Jim regarded the thousands of believers as his slaves. He believed that after death, the soul lived in another world. The tomb is the residence of the owner of the tomb in another world. Everything is handled according to the etiquette of death is like life, death is like life, death is like existence. After the slave owners and nobles died, they would bury their slaves with them so that they could be enslaved after death. Thousands of followers were willing to be buried with him. Even if they had souls after death, he was still the cult master with boundless glory. He's just treating a few thousand lives as child's play. Most of his followers are victims of war and bankrupt civilians. They just want to find a place to shelter them, and Jim instilled this belief in them in the name of the Temple of Light. As for him being chosen as the Holy Son, the so-called living sacrifice also came from the ceremony recorded in the Holy Sutra. Chapter 4479. Alice nodded. I'll talk to Gong Jie about this later. Anyway, it's best that you don't go anywhere except Darkwind Island for now. Hua Jin nodded. Alice suddenly looked at him strangely. Hua Jin touched his face. What? Let me ask you, how far have you progressed with Gong Jie? Alice had a curious look on her face, as if she wanted to hear some gossip. Hua Jin said, Why are you asking about this kind of gossip? Because I'm curious. Alice said anxiously. I see that you like Gong Jie, so don't reject him. Hua Jin said righteously, I'm a straight man, xie. This has nothing to do with being a straight man, right? Gong Jie doesn't like men either. It's just that the person he likes is also a man. What's the conflict? Hua Jin was speechless. What she said made so much sense that he was speechless. After Gong Jie woke up, he coaxed Natalia to wash up and go to the dining room for breakfast. Alice, Hua Jin, Yo-Yo, and Xiao Chen were sitting together for breakfast. When Hua Jin saw Gong Jie, he immediately stood up and walked away as if he was avoiding something. I'm full. With that, he walked away as if he was fleeing from a disaster. Gong Jie sat down in confusion and snorted. It's like he's hiding from a tiger. Alice took a bite of her sandwich and giggled. Doesn't such a guilty expression mean that he's interested in you? Gong Jie looked surprised. How did you know? Let me ask you. Alice suddenly glanced at Natalia, who was standing at the side, and then hinted at Yu with her eyes. If Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen couldn't tell, they would be fools. Hence, Yo-Yo held Natalia's hand and said, Natalia, what do you want to eat? Ham sandwich. The three little buns ran away. Alice held her spoon and narrowed her eyes. She asked mysteriously, Did you kiss her? Yes, Gong Jie was shy. Although he didn't blush, there was a hint of hesitation in his tone. Did he resist? He struggled a lot. Then, did you show that disgusted expression? No. That means that Hua Jin has feelings for you. Alice was so excited that she put down her sandwich. No, it's very emotional. Why do you say that? Obviously, Gong Jie didn't think so. He even felt that Hua Jin should be very resistant to him. Alice smiled and said meaningfully, I'll teach you. You can do an experiment. Alice glanced at Zax, who was sitting not far away and eating breakfast. She said to him, Touch Zax's head the same way you touched Hua Jin's head. You'll know by looking at Zax's reaction. If Hua Jin doesn't have any feelings for you, then... After 2 minutes of mental preparation, Gong Jie walked to Zax and sat down. Zax was the mercenary instructor of the Hurricane Group. He was 28 years old, young, and handsome. However, he was an upright and outspoken man. He was an extremely flirtatious man. Chapter 4480. Little Jar. Gong Jie called him affectionately. Little Jar was how Zax's girlfriend had always addressed him. Zax's face was instantly filled with horror, as though he had seen a ghost. He endured the nausea and asked blankly, Young Master Jie, what's wrong? Nothing. Gong Jie rested his chin on his hand and gazed deeply at him. I just want to quietly watch you eat breakfast. I feel that you look so good even when you're munching on a hamburger. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Zax could clearly feel the goosebumps all over his body breaking out. He felt that his scalp was clearly tightening. This Gong Jie, what was going on? Why was he staring at him with such a strange gaze for no reason? Could it be that after returning from East Africa, he had been influenced by those evil sects and had gone mad? Zax swallowed hard. You have a fever. Do I? Zax was still worried. He reached out his hand and gently placed it on his forehead. In the next second, Gong Jie gently covered the back of his hand. His seemingly unintentional action made Zax shiver all over. He was on guard and looked at him as though he was looking at a pervert. Are you really a Gong Jie? He suspected that the person in front of him was a demon in Gong Jie's skin. Zax slapped his hand away. What are you doing? Gong Jie raised his eyebrows. It was just a habitual action, but it made Zax's shoulders tremble slightly. Perhaps Gong Jie's image in Hurricane was too serious and unsmiling. Moreover, when Zax was still a mercenary, he had been ravaged by Gong Jie too much. Even if he raised his eyebrows, he would still give off a sense of authority. It was different. Zach's reaction was obviously different from Hua Jin's. Gong Jie stood up and rubbed Zach's head. Zach was obviously repulsed by such contact. He shrunk his shoulders and glared at him resentfully, but he didn't dare to say anything. Ha ha ha. Gong Jie couldn't take it anymore. Zach couldn't take it anymore. He gathered his courage and stood up. Young Master Jie, are you crazy? He turned his head and looked at Alice. With an aggrieved expression, he said, Alice, is he sick? Treat him properly. Ha 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 ha. Alice laughed until she bent over the table. Oh my God. Gong Jie really went to experiment. Zach was suffering. He was being teased like this, but he didn't dare to say anything. I just wanted to see the reaction of a straight man. Please, I'm a man. Any normal man would definitely be creeped out if another man touched his head and hands like that, okay? Zach patted his chest lightly. I thought you were King possess. When the Gong Jie returned to his seat, Alice snapped her fingers with a smug look on her face. I was right, wasn't I? You see, any normal man would definitely be very repulsed. Hua Jin is also very against it. Actually, it's not that he can't accept you, but that he can't accept himself. Why? Don't you think that in front of you, he always has an inexplicable sense of inferiority? Alice said quietly, Gong Jie, you're too dazzling. You're so dazzling that no one dares to brag about themselves and get close to you. If the sun was too strong, it would burn people. If there were too many outstanding people, the light they emitted would pierce through people's bodies until they were covered in cuts and bruises. Chapter 4481. Dazzling. Gong Jie was baffled. Why would he think that I'm too dazzling? It's not just him. Even I think that you're dazzling. Hua Jin probably subconsciously thinks that you're too outstanding. He doesn't want to touch you. Gong Jie could not help but laugh when he heard that. Is that so? I think it has something to do with his past. Alice said, I always feel that he has something on his mind. All along, Hua Jin gave me the feeling that he's carrying a heavy burden. He wants to let it go, but he can't. Gong Jie, if you really like him, even if he's incomplete and flawed, you'll still like him. But Hua Jin is different. He might feel that he's not good enough for you, so he subconsciously resists, and keeps a distance from you. Gong Jie's eyes darkened when he heard that. In the afternoon, Hua Jin stayed in his room, bored to death. Yo-Yo knocked on the door and pushed it open. When he saw Hua Jin lying on the sofa, he couldn't help but joke, Uncle Hua Jin, you look like a stranded salted fish. Hua Jin turned his head and looked at him bitterly. Have you seen such a beautiful salted fish? Why are you alone in the room? Sunbathing. Salted fish will dry up if they stay in the sun for too long. I'm not a salted fish. Yo-Yo urged, why don't we play cards? I don't feel like playing cards. Let's play cards. Alice taught us a new game. What game? Yo-Yo pulled out 2 decks of poker cards from nowhere. Poker. Balls originated from JS Province. It was a poker game that was widely spread in the country. It evolved from the local poker games Run Fast and 80 Points. The game was played in pairs of 4, and the winner would level up. Make the game more entertaining and exciting. 2 people in a team would compete against each other. Whoever finished first would be the leader, and the last to finish would be the last. If a team had 1 player in the first and 1 player in the second, they would be able to level up by 3 levels. The most interesting part of this game was leveling up and getting a straight flush. There were many ways to play it, and it tested one's brainpower and logical thinking. Hua Jin could not stop Yo-Yo and was dragged to the chess room. Originally, Darkwind Island didn't have a chess room, but after learning how to play cards from Yoon Shush's family, Gong Jie felt that poker games were very interesting, so he built a few chess rooms in the stadium. Mahjong tables, poker tables, everything was available. When they arrived at the chess room, they realized that Gong Jie and Natalia were there as well. Alice was teaching Natalia how to play cards. Originally, there were 4 people: Alice, Gong Jie, Hua Jin, and Yo-Yo. Xiao Chen was not very good at poker games, so he politely declined. Natalia learned how to play, and she wanted to play as well. Therefore, Alice said that she didn't want to play anymore, and she wanted to be Natalia's strategist. The teams were divided into groups, and the 4 black and red cards were used to draw teammates. For some reason, Hua Jin was assigned to the same group as Gong Jie. It was unknown if it was a tacit understanding or something else. Hua Jin probed, "There's no punishment in this game, right?" "There is," Alice said, "truth or dare." Again, Hua Jin stood up and wanted to leave. Chapter 4482. Alice blocked the door. "Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. It's fine if you don't want to play the punishment game, but we'll pay for it." Yo-Yo and Gong Jie placed their bank cards on the table. Gong Jie's was a Centurion black gold card. Hua Jin's eyes widened. "How much?" 1 million per round. Yo-Yo raised one finger. "Well, I'll pay for Natalia's share." Gong Jie looked at Hua Jin. Hua Jin gulped, took out his wallet, and placed a few bank cards on the table. "So much?" "No. He was poor. Although he was considered rich compared to the average person, he was not as rich as Gong Jie and Yo-Yo. Moreover, 1 million per round was too much for him. Hua Jin really wanted to retreat. After understanding the game, Hua Jin still did not fully understand it. He looked at Gong Jie expectantly. At this moment, it seemed like he was the only one he could rely on. "Gong Jie, I'm counting on you." "Mph. It's fine, 1 million per round is nothing." Yo-Yo added, "Yeah, if it weren't for you, we would have doubled the bombs." "Doubled the bombs? That would be at least tens of millions. Must it be so King tragic? There are winners and losers." With that, Yo-Yo looked at Gong Jie evilly. "Uncle, let's fight to the death today." Alice took out her credit card machine and stood at the side, looking like she was watching a show. No wonder she didn't want to participate. Damn it, if 4 bombs were dropped, it would be close to 10 million. Although 10 million wasn't a huge amount to Gong Jie and Yo-Yo, to him, it was practically bankrupt. This wasn't a game of cards, this was a game of life and death. The game started, and Gong Jie made the first move. Hua Jin was still sorting out the cards when he saw Gong Jie and Yu, who were on his left, doing the paperwork at lightning speed. In just a short while, they were done shuffling the cards. Hua Jin sorted out his cards and looked at them. There were a total of 4 singles in his hand. Gong Jie made the first move, and he made a single 3. Hua Jin was delighted and eager to try. Alas, Yu suddenly played a trump card. Hua Jin's hand, which was holding the single card, trembled. So ruthless right from the start. Yu was sitting on top of Hua Jin and had a strong hand in the cards, while Gong Jie was sitting on top of Yu and had a strong hand in the cards. It was as if the two were having a battle. 4 8s. 5 2s, 3 4 5 6 7 straights a straight flush. 10 JH. After 3 to 4 rounds, Hua Jin didn't have a chance to make a single move. He was silently calculating in his heart. A single move was worth 1 million, and if he made a double move, then there would be a total of 5 moves. Rounding it up, it would be 16 million. He was about to faint. Hua Jin couldn't get up from the setback. He suddenly raised his hand and interrupted. Let me ask you a question. If it's 1 million, is it RMB? Yo-Yo reminded him coldly, "I only have 5 cards left." Hua Jin was so flustered that he wanted to cry but had no tears. 16 million. This King invisible psychological pressure was making him so flustered that he didn't know where to go. Yo-Yo looked at him, who was breaking out in cold sweat. She was slightly speechless. "What happened to you?" Chapter 4483. Is 1 million a lot? Alice hugged the card machine and was a little confused. "When I was in Las Vegas, I saw a lot of rich people throw their money around. Their wins and losses were in the millions or tens of millions. Some even spent hundreds of millions." Hua Jin resisted the urge to explode. "Come on, I said it myself. I'm rich. I'm not rich. I'm just a semi-retired person from the entertainment industry." Hua Jin finally caught Yo-Yo's cards. Alice stood behind Natalia and taught her how to play. "Shameless," Hua Jin said angrily. "It's a 2-on-2, but now it's a 2-on-3. Natalia doesn't know how to play." "That won't do." Alice muttered a few words. Gongjie said, "Don't worry, I won." Gongjie threw away all the cards in his hand. "I won." It was a straight. Gongjie had the upper hand. Hua Jin's eyes lit up slightly. He lost and felt that the millions were back in his pocket. Gongjie looked at his relieved expression and did not know whether to laugh or cry. Yo-Yo could only pass the card to Alice. Alice was in charge of swiping the card. With a beep, millions were transferred from the account. Is this really Darkwind Island? This is AF King upgraded version of Las Vegas. Hua Jin did not like gambling because he knew that gambling was a game where you only lost and never won. No matter how good you were or how lucky you were, you could not win forever. However, as he gradually adapted to the rules of the game, his coordination with Gongjie gradually improved, and they made great strides in the game. Unexpectedly, Yo-Yo's card luck also became smoother and he slowly caught up. Most importantly, Yo-Yo did not have as much psychological pressure as Hua Jin did. Moreover, not only was his card luck good, but his logical thinking was unbelievable. There were many times when Yo-Yo would change the cards that he was sure to lose and he would win with different tricks. This child is so young and his card skills are so amazing. What will happen when he grows up? Slowly, Yo-Yo overtook him. For the entire afternoon, Hua Jin was in a state of fear. He had tried his best, but in the end, he lost a few million. Therefore, when the game ended, Hua Jin sat on the chair dejectedly as if his soul had been sucked out. Natalia and Yo-Yo looked at Hua Jin. Gongjie could not help but laugh. Yo-Yo-Yo-Yo-Yo-Yo-Yo-Yo-Yo-Oh. Yo-Yo-Yo-Oh-Oh-Yo-Yo-Yo-Yo-Oh. Hua Jin wanted to cry. I'm not as rich as you. A few million, that's all I have. He had been dragged into this by Yo-Yo. In an instant, he had lost all his assets. Hua Jin wanted to jump into the sea. After winning the money, Yo-Yo felt refreshed. He said that he wanted to treat Alice to a drink and left with Natalia. Gongjie stood up and walked over to Hua Jin. He gave him a little push. The next second, Hua Jin slumped on the table. Hongmen banquet, he let out a bitter sigh. Gongjie said disapprovingly, "You only lost a few million. I'll pay for what you lost." Chapter 4484. How can this be counted as yours? Since you've lost, there's no reason for you to foot the bill. The moment he raised his head, he met Gongjie's deep gaze. He looked at him quietly, as if he wanted to dig out some treasure from his eyes. Only then did he realize that at this moment, only the two of them were left in the chess room. He couldn't help feeling a little awkward. The atmosphere was silent. When he woke up in the morning, he saw Gongjie lying beside him, even though Natalia was in between them. When he thought of what had happened the night before, he ran out of the room as if he was fleeing. He didn't know what he was running away from. It was almost instinctive. Hua Jin felt a little guilty. Why are you staring at me? I'm going on a long trip. I'll be away for a while. Hua Jin looked puzzled. Why? Where are you going? I'm going to settle some matters. Is it dangerous? Gongjie furrowed his brows slightly. There's a certain risk in saying it's dangerous, but there's no other way. This matter has to be settled. Do you have to go personally? Hua Jin was a little worried. If it's so dangerous, can't you leave it to someone else? Gongjie's eyes flickered with a sharp glint. Why? You're worried about me? No. I'm just concerned as a friend. When Gongjie heard this, he knew that it wasn't out of concern as a friend, but out of awkwardness. However, when he saw Hua Jin's worried expression, he suddenly felt a little better. So what if it's dangerous? Gongjie crossed his arms and leaned lightly on the table. If I don't come back, won't you be more relaxed? Relaxed? Why should I feel relaxed? Otherwise, I can see that you're not relaxed now. It's as if you're guarding against me. What are you talking about? If you don't come back, everyone will be very sad. Especially Shusha, she'll definitely break down. Everyone will be sad. Gongjie suddenly lowered his head and leaned closer to him. Then may I ask, does this include you? Hua Jin was once again at a loss for words. Enough. Gongjie ruffled his hair. I won't bully you anymore. This fellow also knew that he was bullying him. Hua Jin didn't know what to say for a moment. It seemed that the two of them were at a complicated watershed, a bottleneck. They wanted to break through, but they couldn't help but want to retreat. It seemed that they were stuck there. Just as Gong Jie was about to leave, Hua Jin mustered up the courage to stand up and say to him, "Gong Jie, if it's really dangerous, don't go." Gong Jie looked at him with an inscrutable expression. Hua Jin looked at him and walked over. "What's the matter? Is it convenient for you to tell me?" Gong Jie suddenly reached out and pulled him in front of him. "You're still saying that you don't care about me? Hua Jin, is it really that difficult for you to admit that you care about me?" Hua Jin's body stiffened. He looked at his feet and felt that he was sinking deeper and deeper into a quagmire. He didn't dare to look at Gong Jie. That pair of eyes was like a deep abyss. With one look, he felt as if he had fallen into it and couldn't extricate himself. Chapter 4485. Gong Jie was about to leave when Hua Jin mustered up the courage to stand up and say to him, "Gong Jie, if it's really dangerous, don't go." Gong Jie turned to look at him with an unreadable expression. Hua Jin looked at him and walked over. "What's the matter? Is it convenient for you to say?" Gong Jie suddenly reached out and pulled him in front of him. "You're still saying that you're not concerned? Hua Jin, is it really that difficult for you to admit that you care about me?" Hua Jin's body stiffened. He felt like he was sinking deeper and deeper into a quagmire. He didn't dare to look at Gong Jie. Those eyes were eyes, but they were more like a deep abyss. With one look, he felt like he was falling into it and couldn't extricate himself. Hua Jin closed his eyes and finally said, "Okay, I admit that I'm worried about you. Since you said that it's very dangerous, I don't want you to go." His words were as plain as water, but it made Gong Jie's heartbeat accelerate. How many years had it been, other than reuniting with Yun Shusha and Yueyao's birth? Even when he was trapped in East Africa, there was absolutely nothing that could disturb his mind. But he was like a surprise that appeared out of nowhere. Gong Jie was in a daze when Hua Jin suddenly grabbed his shirt sleeve. "If I tell you not to go, will you not go?" Hua Jin was really worried. Gong Jie smiled. "You don't have confidence in me?" "No, yeah, I have to go." Gong Jie said again, "Stay here obediently and wait for me." Hua Jin pursed his lips and didn't say anything else. There was a moment of uneasiness. He suddenly realized that Gong Jie's departure this time seemed to have something to do with him. Gong Jie saw the undisguised worry on his face. For a moment, he was in a good mood. He bowed slightly and used his unique height advantage to force him to a corner. "Do you know how much I like your expression right now?" Gong Jie, who had always been arrogant and cold and cherished his words like gold, actually said such words. Hua Jin felt very dizzy. "I don't understand what you mean by that." The next second, before Hua Jin could finish speaking, Gong Jie suddenly bent down and kissed him gently on the lips. Gong Jie couldn't help but ask for more. That boiling hot breath seemed to corrode his rationality bit by bit. Hua Jin stood rooted to the ground in a daze, neither refusing nor replying. Gong Jie grabbed his arm and wrapped it around his waist. With this, there was no longer any barrier between the two. He hugged Hua Jin domineeringly and nibbled on his beautiful neck and shoulders, so fragrant. The fragrance on his body was refreshing. Gong Jie realized that he was using the same scent as him. It was as if the scent of both of them had merged together. He couldn't tell which was his and which was his. He liked this feeling. Hua Jin, on the other hand, was so flustered that he forgot to reject the man's kiss. Gong Jie's kiss actually made him a little infatuated. All this time, no matter who he was in front of, he had always been careful to protect himself. He didn't expect that such a man would barge into his world unscrupulously and stir up a storm of blood. Hua Jin's breathing gradually became hurried. In a daze, he suddenly heard Gong Jie say, "I will come back safe and sound. Because this body, in the future, will be yours." Chapter 4486. When Gong Jie let go of him, if he wasn't leaning against the wall, Hua Jin's body would have slid to the ground. Gong Jie rubbed the boy's head lovingly and left. When Hua Jin came back to his senses and chased after him, he was already gone. At night, Hua Jin hesitated again and again. In the end, he went to find Alice and asked directly, Gongjie said that he has something to do and needs to go on a long trip. What did he tell you? Hua Jin suddenly became excited. What's going on? You must know. Alice looked at him as if he was an idiot. What do you think? I've known Gongjie for so long, but I've never seen him so concerned about anyone. Because of my matter? Hua Jin was even more shocked. Do you think? I remember I told you that the remnants of the sacred palace haven't been completely eliminated. They're looking for you. Gongjie received an invitation from the International Federation. Those remnants naturally have to be eliminated. Leaving them in this world is a disaster. So, was it really because of his matter? Was Gongjie protecting him? Then, why didn't he tell him about it? Those believers are all terrorists. Hua Jin became agitated. How cruel are their methods? Won't it be dangerous for Gongjie to go? You underestimate Gongjie too much. Besides, there are so many people protecting him. Don't worry, he'll be fine. Even if he's fine, Hua Jin clenched his fists. What if he gets hurt? You care about him so much. I couldn't tell. I think you two have a good relationship. You think too much. Hua Jin said righteously. I just don't want him to get hurt because of my matter. You're speaking so confidently. Isn't your problem his problem? Moreover, the grudge between Hurricane and the Sacred Palace has been formed. Apart from you, he also has his own temper. In East Africa, several of his beloved subordinates died so tragically because of the Sacred Hall. He will definitely go there to take revenge. Hua Jin sat on the sofa in silence. He suddenly raised his head and asked, Can I go with him? Forget it. If you go, you'll just be sending yourself to death. Alice spat out a sentence that choked him to death. Hua Jin said angrily, In East Africa, I also put in a lot of effort and didn't drag you down. In East Africa. If it weren't for you, Shou Jie wouldn't have almost died there. Hua Jin felt so guilty that he didn't say anything. Actually, I've always felt that Xiao Jie's feelings for you were a little special. I didn't think too much about it at first, and I'm sure he didn't think too much about it either. However, during his time in East Africa, perhaps because he had experienced too many calamities, he immediately recognized his feelings. You know, there are often many things that can only be figured out when one is on the brink of death. Hua Jin said, Is this the worst time he's ever offended someone? This is definitely not the worst time he's ever had. There was once when Gongjie almost got pregnant. However, this time, the situation is different from the past. How is it different? Alice looked at Hua Jin as if she was looking at a hopeless idiot. Don't you understand? This time, you almost died. You were unconscious on the ship for so long and had a high fever when you came back. You don't know that when you were unconscious, Gongjie thought that you wouldn't make it. You didn't eat or drink for a few days. Wasn't he the same? Chapter 4487. For many things, the closer you are to life and death, the easier it is for you to think things through. He really thought that he was going to lose you. Lying in bed, Hua Jin replayed Alice's words over and over in his mind. If it were not for her, he would not have known that he was so important to Gongjie. Why? He could not figure out why someone as outstanding as Gongjie would like him. Alice could not help but laugh when she heard that. Like is too abstract. Take me as an example. The first time I saw Gongjie, I inexplicably fell in love with him. I can't remember what I really liked about him. But I vaguely remember that I was deeply infatuated with his youthful frivolity and high-spirited spirit. She liked him. Even if it was just a glance. She did not understand why she would become crazy once she fell in love with others, even though she was very rational when it came to love. When Gongjie was infected with the Amila virus, I liked him. In order to save him, I did not hesitate to use myself as a test subject. I could not believe that there would be such a day where I would be so cruel to myself and use myself as a test subject. At that time, I actually did not have any expectations. I even thought that if the experiment failed, at least he would not be lonely with me by his side. But I never thought that because of my sacrifice, I would want him to repay me. If he liked me, so be it. Until I found out that the person he liked was you, I had no complaints. Alice laughed evilly as she said, At least I would feel better in my heart. Otherwise, I would be very sad. In Alice's room, she took out many photos of Gong Jie when he was young. When she was helping Gong Jie to tidy up his room, she felt that the photos of Gong Jie when he was young were especially cute and interesting. Hence, she secretly hid the photos for herself. Usually, she could not bear to take them out. She took out the photos and showed them to Hua Jin. In the photos, most of them were photos of Gong Jie when he was young. Alice sighed with emotion as she showed Hua Jin the signboard. Shou Jie really likes you a lot. There was an unspeakable envy in her tone. I've never seen him smile at anyone like that. Hua Jin flipped through the photos one by one. In the photos, whether it was when he was young or after he grew up, Gong Jie always had a cold and unsmiling face when facing the camera. He seemed to really hate smiling. There was a picture of the Gong family in uniform. Everyone was wearing the uniform of the Gong family's private navy. Gong Jie was standing in the middle of the last row. His gaze was terrifyingly gloomy. It was hard to imagine that the young man in the picture was actually Gong Jie in his youth. Looks like the murderous aura is very strong. His murderous aura is indeed very strong. I've always thought that Gong Jie was a very heartless and cold-blooded person. I remember there's a saying that if a person's murderous aura is very strong, then his life would be very tough. Even the king of hell would not dare to take him. We all laughed that Shou Jie would definitely live a long life, haha. Alice laughed and let out a long sigh of relief. However, Shou Jie has really changed a lot now. Other than Shusha, you've changed him a lot too. Hua Jin sighed. Me? What have I done to deserve it? Chapter 4488. When he returned to his room, Hua Jin was still absent-minded. He lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. His heart gradually calmed down. He closed his eyes and stopped thinking so much. The next day, when Hua Jin woke up, Alice told him that Gong Jie had left at dawn. Hua Jin was a little absent-minded. He didn't know why, but he had an ominous premonition. It was Gong Jie's order to arrange for Hua Jin and Natalia to stay on Darkwind Island. After all, Hua Jin was facing many threats at that time. Gong Jie couldn't let him go as long as the remnants of the Sacred Hall were not eliminated. He didn't want to be kidnapped again. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen took a private jet back to China. Because Yu Yaro had a fever on the eve of his birthday. The two of them had stayed on Darkwind Island for a long time. Yo-Yo's condition had stabilized. They missed Yu Yaro very much. Since it was Yu Yao's birthday, the two of them had decided to go back early. They didn't expect Yu Yaro to have a fever. Yu Yaro was 4 years old. It wasn't a small matter for a child at this age to have a fever. Yun Shusha was very nervous. The family doctor said that it was best to do a comprehensive checkup. It was safer to go to the hospital. Many children at this age contracted pneumonia because the doctor didn't do a comprehensive checkup. Therefore, she nervously carried the child to the hospital. In the hospital, Yu Yaro had a fever of 39 degrees Celsius. It was said that the fever alternated between warm and cold. When Yu Yaro fell asleep at night, he liked to kick the blanket because of the heat. When it was late at night, the temperature turned cold and he caught a cold. Once a child caught a cold, his fever rose quickly. The doctor suggested that he stay in the hospital for observation. During the observation period, Yu Yao's condition gradually stabilized. Then, Yun Shusha was surprised to find that she met a child in the hospital. Jing Yang. Yun Shusha had a deep impression of this child. The first time she saw this child was when she and Jiyu Xingze had an accident. She lost her sight and Jiyu Xingze donated his corneas to another child, Jing Yang. At that time, her eyes had not recovered, so she did not see what the child looked like. However, even though she couldn't see, she had held the child before. Coincidentally, he met Jing Yang this time because Jing Yang had caught a cold and had a fever, just like Yu Yao. The two children stayed in the same ward and on the same floor. Yun Shusha happened to see Jing Yang when she was fetching water for Yu Yao. He had just finished his 4-drip, and the lively little guy was clamoring to get out of bed for a walk. When he passed by Yu Yao's ward, he heard Yu Yao crying because she was taking his temperature. The little fellow curiously went to the door and bumped into Yun Shusha, who was about to get hot water. The little bun bumped into her leg. Yoon Shusha did not know who he was, but she was attracted by the little fellow's handsome face at first sight. He was really cute. He had a pair of big watery eyes, and the pupils were amber. They were mesmerizing, and his long eyelashes were thick and curly. He was very cute. His skin was fairer than the average girl's, and his lips were pink. They were not too rosy, but they were not too pale either. The shape of his lips was unusually good-looking, like jelly. Chapter 4489. When he saw Yoon Shusha, the little guy took half a step back timidly. He was obviously a little shy and afraid. There was still a fever patch on his forehead. So it was also because of a fever. Yoon Shusha squatted down and asked him his name. However, the little guy was very vigilant. He shook his head and intertwined his hands. Obviously, he was unwilling to say and was very vigilant. Beside him, the little bun's mother rushed over. When she saw that her son had rushed to the door of someone else's ward, she quickly rushed over and bowed to Yoon Shusha to apologize. However, when she recognized that it was Yoon Shusha, her eyes widened in disbelief. It's you." Yoon Shusha was a little surprised. "Me? Do you know me?" She was not too curious. That was because too many people knew her. However, this woman's surprise did not seem like she had seen a superstar, but an old friend. "Yoon Shusha, is that you?" The woman picked up the little bun and smiled as she held the little bun's hand. She waved at her. "Come, Yang, say hello to Auntie." Seeing that his mother seemed to know this auntie, the little bun opened his mouth and called out in a childish voice, "Auntie, Miss Yoon, it's me. This is my son. His name is Jing Yang. Do you still remember him?" "Ah," Yoon Shusha let out a short "ah." In an instant, her gaze landed on Jing Yang again, but her eyes were already red with emotion. This child was the child who received Xingzhe's cornea donation. When Yang was born, he was the same as other children, but as he gradually grew up, other children began to look at the world curiously. However, he lay in the crib, motionless, and didn't know how to fool around. I teased him with toys, but he didn't have any reaction. Although his eyes were wide open, they weren't focused. Jing Qi sat on the bed and chatted with Yoon Shusha. Beside her, Jing Yang was lying beside Yueyao's bed. He held his little head and curiously sized up the little girl who was about the same age as him. He stared at her curiously and carefully reached out to poke her face from time to time. Yu Yaro had just had a fever injection and was already asleep. Yoon Shusha was listening attentively. Jing Qi continued, "He was always lying still. I was afraid that something would happen to the child. I sent him to the hospital and found out that the child had a congenital cornea defect. The doctor said that it might be because I didn't get enough nutrition when I was pregnant, but he couldn't rule out other reasons. In any case, the child was born with a problem with his eyes. When I found out about this, I was so worried that I couldn't sleep well for a few nights. The child's surgery fees are a problem, not to mention the scarce source of cornea donors." Yoon Shusha looked at Jing Yang and felt pity for him. Perhaps it was love for the house, love its crow. For the past few years, she had been missing Jiyu Xingze. In this child, she seemed to see the continuation of Jiyu Xingze's life. Thank you very much. If it wasn't for Mr. Jiyu Xingze, I wouldn't know what to do. I also thought of donating my own cornea to him, but the doctor said that the hospital doesn't have the right to perform such a surgery. I like this child. Not only is this child beautiful, but he gives me a sense of familiarity." Chapter 4490. The person had passed away, and the living were like this. Jing Qi lowered her head, feeling a little sad. She suddenly said, "Actually, I didn't know about Jiyu Xingze before, but after that, I went to watch many of his movies, including the Green Apple that you guys filmed together." After a pause, Jing Qi didn't know if she should mention this. "I think Mr. Jiyu Xingze likes you very much, right?" "You?" Yoon Shusha looked at her in surprise. "I'm sorry." Jing Qi lowered her head guiltily. "Actually, I know that with my identity, I shouldn't mention this. However, the movie The Green Apple, especially, made me cry. It's too touching. We're clearly in love, but we have to be in so much pain. I've watched this movie several times. Moreover, from this movie, I can tell that the way Mr. Jiu Xingze looks at you is from the bottom of his heart. It's not an act. Yun Shusha suddenly fell silent. Jingqi continued, I'm very sad about Mr. Jiu Xingze's accident, but I also hope that you can let him go. I think that if there's a next life, perhaps the two of you will meet again at a certain street corner. Look, fate is really a magical thing. We actually met here again and even stayed in the ward next door. Don't you think this is a magical thing? Yun Shusha heard this and agreed. She suddenly asked curiously, I've never seen your husband. Where's Yang Yang's father? When Jingqi heard this, she suddenly lowered her eyelashes sadly, her eyes filled with disappointment. His father, what's wrong? Yun Shusha saw her melancholic expression and became uneasy. Did something happen? Just tell me. If I can help you, I'll do my best. Thank you, Shusha. But, actually, I didn't mention the child's father to you last time because I'm actually not married yet. Not married? Yun Shusha's heart skipped a beat. She inexplicably saw herself in this lonely and stubborn woman. 5 years ago, I fell in love with a man and wanted to be with him without hesitation. But now, it seems that I'm like a moth flying into a flame. Until the child was born, he had no intention of marrying me. Only then did I realize that the man I foolishly loved didn't love me. When father and mother found out that I had a child out of wedlock, they were furious and wanted me to sell the child. As Jingqi spoke, her eyes were slightly moist. Speaking of which, I'm ashamed. Back then, I did have such an idea. Originally, when the child was born, I had the idea of marrying that man. However, when I realized that the man wouldn't marry me, the child was also diagnosed with a cornea defect. My mother convinced me that since that man didn't want me, it would be difficult for me to remarry with a child. You know, many men are very concerned about a woman's past. I thought that even if the child had the opportunity to undergo surgery, the medical fees were not something I could afford. I was thinking that I might as well entrust the child to a good family. Perhaps, he might be able to live a happier life. Chapter 4491. You have to know that this child hasn't cried much since he was born. He cried so hard that even my mother was scared. I believed that this was a telepathic connection between him and me. When we reached the door of that family, I immediately regretted it. I knelt in front of my mother with the child in my arms and begged bitterly. My mother's heart softened, so she didn't take that wrong step. Yun Shusha asked worriedly, later, did your parents accept this child? Jingqi sighed and shook her head. No, my father didn't accept it in the end. He even threatened to cut off our father-daughter relationship. My mother's heart ached for me. Although she didn't agree with my actions and felt that this child would delay my life, she would occasionally sneak a few glances at me and the child behind my father's back. Yang Yang is very sensible, obedient, and she likes him very much. My mother likes this child now. As she said this, Jingqi looked at Jing Yang with eyes full of love. By the bed, Jing Yang was gently fiddling with Yueyao's long eyelashes with his small hands. Yuyaro was sleeping peacefully. When Jingqi saw him, she immediately stopped him in a low voice. Yang Yang, don't touch, Mom. Her eyebrows are so beautiful. Jing Yang turned his head, his eyes bright as if there were many little stars. They're just like dolls. So cute. Little fool, those are eyelashes, not eyebrows. Oh, eyelashes, eyelashes. Jing Yang muttered eyelashes silently. He was so young that he couldn't even distinguish eyelashes from eyebrows. Don't touch your sister. She's sick, understand? Yun Shusha smiled and said, it's okay. When Jing Yang heard this, he replied with an "oh." He turned his head and looked at Yuyaro, his heart full of love. So cute. She was even cuter than a doll. This little sister was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. Jingqi said to Jing Yang, let's go back to our room and take your medicine obediently. Then, take an afternoon nap, okay? In the past, Jing Yang would definitely listen to her words. But now, he didn't say a word. He lowered his head and pouted. It was obvious that he was unwilling. Jingqi was surprised. Was this little guy throwing a tantrum? Jing Yang was now in kindergarten. Because of his handsome and cute appearance, he was very popular with the girls in the class. However, He liked to play with boys. Even if there were so many girls chasing after him to play with him, he would ignore them all. Although Jing Yang was well behaved in front of her, he was actually very naughty when he was with the other boys in the class. It was also from the class teacher that he found out that many girls in the class were jealous of him. Jingqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At such a young age, she already knows how to be jealous. However, Jing Yang, who never liked to play with girls, was unwilling to go back to the ward because of the Yu Yao. Jingqi seemed to have seen through his thoughts. Do you think your sister is very cute and want to stay and accompany her? Yes. What's her name? Yun Shusha also squatted down and looked at him at eye level. She looked at him and said, her name is Yu Yao, Mu Yu Yao. Yu Yao. Jing Yang seriously and methodically learned to speak. Finally, he said Yu Yao's name very clearly. She's sick. Jing Yang lay by the bed and looked, obviously unwilling to leave. Chapter 4492. When Yun Shusha saw this, she said to Jingqi, since he likes to be with Yu Yao, let him stay. When Jingqi heard this, she said cautiously, will it cause you trouble? How can that be? I can't even wait to like him. Yun Shusha and Jingqi chatted idly. At first, Jingqi was still a little nervous. After all, Yun Shusha was a public figure and a big star. She was afraid that she had said something wrong. But later on, Yun Shusha gave her an extremely amiable feeling, and she gradually opened her mouth. The women sat together and talked about nothing more than the children's problems. As they chatted, Jing Yang let out a surprised sound. Wow! Yu Yao is awake. Yun Shusha and Jingqi turned their heads in unison and saw Yu Yao slowly opening her eyes. The moment she opened her eyes, they seemed to emit a dazzling light like diamonds. Jing Yang, who was lying at the side, actually suffocated. So beautiful. Jing Yang had originally stayed by Yu Yao's side out of curiosity. He saw that her face was red from fever and her eyelashes were long. Even though her eyes were closed, it wasn't hard to imagine how adorable she was. However, when Yu Yao opened her eyes, Jing Yang felt that his breathing was almost stagnant. He was afraid that his breath would accidentally wrinkle such a beautiful face. Jingqi saw that Jing Yang's face was actually red and found it strange. Yang, why is your face red? Jing Yang heard this but did not say anything. Yun Shusha also saw his red face. Yu Yao opened her eyes. They flickered softly like the fluttering wings of a butterfly. She turned to look at Yun Shusha and pouted. Mommy. Yu Yao hurts. Where does it hurt? Head. Yu Yao's speech was not very smooth. She was slurring her words, but they sounded extremely cute. When Jingqi heard this, she immediately urged Jing Yang to say, Yang, sister says she has a headache. Do you want to rub it for her? Can I? Of course. Jing Yang timidly stretched out his small hand. Yu Yao then saw an unfamiliar boy lying on the bed. She was a little scared and pulled up the quilt to cover half of her small face. She only used a pair of eyes to secretly size him up. Jing Yang's face turned even redder. However, he refused to retract his hand. Instead, he leaned forward. His small hand was carefully placed on her forehead. Yu Yao looked at him and then at his hand on her forehead. She licked her dry lips and finally revealed a little of her face. Jing Yang smiled at her and immediately said, I'm Jing Yang. You can call me Yang. Yang, Yu Yao was still a little shy. She was so afraid of strangers. Since she was young, other than Yun Shusha and Yo, it was difficult for others to hold her for a while. Yun Shusha was surprised that Jing Yang could touch her forehead. This child has been afraid of strangers since she was young. Yun Shusha explained, I thought she would cry when she woke up and saw Yang. So afraid of strangers. My Yang has never been afraid of strangers since he was young, but this child is very smart. He was almost kidnapped by human traffickers when he was young. Kidnapped. Chapter 4493. The nurse came to make ward rounds and found Jing Yang's room. Seeing that he was not around, she went next door, but she did not expect Jingqi to bring Jing Yang to another room. Seeing Yun Shusha and Jingqi sitting together, the nurse was a little surprised. Do you know each other? Yun Shusha and Jingqi nodded tacitly. Yes, we know each other. Yang, Come over and take the temperature. Have you taken your medicine? As Jing Yang was beautiful and polite, all the nurses on the entire floor liked him. His little mouth was sweet and especially likable. Jingqi quickly stood up. Not yet. The nurse walked over and handed the sterilized thermometer to Jing Yang. Jing Yang obediently put it in his mouth and stared at the nurse with wide eyes. He asked incoherently, "Have I recovered?" The nurse tapped his head. "You're almost recovered. Then, can I still stay here?" His words undoubtedly amused the group of people. The nurse could not stop laughing. Yang, don't tell me you can't bear to part with us and refuse to leave." Jing Yang did not speak and only looked at the nurse eagerly. The nurse explained, "When you recover, you can be discharged. You can't stay here anymore. The beds here are all prepared for patients." When Jingqi heard this, she looked at the nurse. "Has his fever gone down?" "It's almost stable. As long as he doesn't catch a cold and try not to be exposed to the cold wind at night, it won't happen again." When Jing Yang heard that he could not stay in the hospital after recovering, he could not help but feel extremely disappointed. The nurse also took Yueyao's temperature and gave him an injection to reduce his fever, but his temperature had decreased a lot. Yueyao's mother, "Why don't you take Yuyaro for a walk downstairs? While the sun is good in the afternoon, he can sweat a little and recover faster." "Okay," Jingqi suggested. "I saw the nurse say that Yang is almost recovered. He can be discharged tomorrow. Why don't we go for a walk in the hospital's back garden? The hospital's back garden is specially manicured. When I took Yang down yesterday, the little guy couldn't walk when he saw the bubble machine. I didn't buy it yesterday and the little guy was angry with me. Today, I can buy one to compensate him." Yun Shusha also nodded. Mu Yaja was not around, and Yo and Xiaochen would only arrive the next day. She had been taking care of Yuyaro the whole day. Yun Shusha carried Yuyaro and Jingqi to the back garden. When Jing Yang saw the back garden, he was very excited. He took the 5 yuan that Jingqi handed him and ran to the hospital's convenience store to buy a bubble machine. He held up the bubble machine and ran back to Yuyaro as if he was presenting a treasure. When Yuyaro saw this, she was extremely moved. She gently kicked her legs, indicating to Yun Shusha that she wanted to come down. Yun Shusha hurriedly put Yuyaro down, and the little guy ran to Jing Yang. When the two little guys stood together, Jing Yang was still taller. She stood on her tiptoes and reached for the bubble machine in his hand. Jing Yang was just about to give the bubble machine to Yuyaro. When Yun Shusha saw this, she immediately reminded her, "Yuyaro, you're not allowed to snatch it. If you want to play, you have to ask your brother if he agrees." Jingqi was even more surprised by her good upbringing. Originally, she thought that the child of a big celebrity should be doted on since he was young. His upbringing and etiquette were not outstanding. Chapter 4494. As it turned out, while Yun Shusha doted on her child, she never neglected her education. In Yueyao's heart, Yun Shusha was very prestigious. She had never hit her, but the little girl was willing to listen to her. When Yuyaro heard Yun Shusha's words, she retracted her hand and asked carefully, "Can you lend it to me to play with?" Of course, Jing Yang was willing to let her play with it. He could even give it to her. Originally, he had wanted to play with it yesterday, but because Jingqi didn't buy it immediately and forgot to bring cash, he could only watch the other children play. When some of the children saw him standing alone, they took the initiative to come over and invite him to join them. But Jing Yang wasn't willing. After returning to the ward, the night passed. When he woke up, he was no longer interested in the bubble machine. Jing Yang had bought the bubble machine because he felt that Yuyaro would like it, so it was a little like presenting a treasure. Jing Yang handed the bubble machine to her. Yuyaro held the bubble machine in her hand lovingly, raised it high, and took a few steps forward happily. Yang, take Sister Yuyaro to play, okay? Okay. The back garden wasn't big. Jingqi and Yun Shusha were circling the small flower bed. The children were playing in the fitness area and could be seen at a glance. Yun Shusha could never bear to let Yuyaro out of her sight. She and Jingqi sat on the stone bench and chatted, while Jingqi held Yueyao's hand and went to the small square to play with the bubble machine. Yuyaro especially liked bubbles. On this day, The afternoon sun was especially good. Under the refraction of the sun, the bubbles that came out were colorful like rainbow balls. Yuyaro loved rainbows the most. Every time a bubble came out, she would be foolishly happy for a long time. Jingyang took the bubble machine and sprayed a lot of bubbles on her body. Yuyaro suddenly felt like she was surrounded by bubbles. The moment the bubble came into contact with her body, it popped and burst. Instantly, the cool bubbles splashed on her skin, and it felt a little cool. She liked this feeling. Seeing that she liked it so much, Jingqi kept blowing bubbles at her. A child of this age had an extremely rich imagination. It was just a bubble machine, and they could play with it. Just like that, the two little guys excitedly played with a bubble pistol for the whole afternoon. They were so happy that Yun Shusha and Jingqi were unwilling to leave no matter how they called them. They stayed in the square. In the end, when Yun Shusha carried Yuyaro in her arms, Yuyaro looked at Jingyang with an aggrieved expression, reluctant to part with him. It turned out that when they were playing, Jingyang told her that he might be discharged from the hospital the next day, and she didn't know if she could see him again. When Yuyaro heard this, he was a little absent-minded and started to feel unhappy. Yang, say goodbye to your sister. Jingqi tempted him. Jingyang raised his small hand, but he couldn't bear to wave it away. He just stared at her deeply, obviously unwilling to part with her just like that. But when he heard Jingqi say that Yuyaro still had to take medicine when she went back, he waved his hand sensibly. When Jingqi carried him back to the ward, the nurse came to deliver the medicine, but he was unwilling to take it. Be good, Yang. Aren't you going to listen to mommy? You have to be good and take the medicine to recover. However, he shook his head and refused to take it. Didn't the nurse say that I'm almost recovered? Then you have to eat today's portion. I don't want to eat. It's so bitter. Chapter 4495. Under Jingqi's coercion, Jingyang obediently swallowed the pill. However, when Jingqi turned around, the little guy ran to the bathroom and spat out the pill hidden under his tongue. He didn't want to take the medicine. If he took the medicine, he would definitely recover very quickly. At that time, he would have no choice but to be discharged and wouldn't be able to see his little Yuyao. He still wanted to stay in the hospital and play with his little Yuyao. It didn't matter if he had a few more injections. At night, when the nurse came to check on him, she measured his temperature again. Aya, Yang, Xiaobao's fever is almost gone. He can be discharged tomorrow. Jingyang stood at the side, his eyes wide open as if he had been struck by lightning. The nurse held the thermometer and looked at Yang, who was widening his eyes. She squatted down and hugged the little guy reluctantly. Aya, Auntie really can't bear for Yang to leave. However, Yang can't stay sick forever and stay in the hospital. After he's discharged, he must be careful not to catch a cold. When Jingqi heard that he could be discharged, she asked excitedly, won't his fever return? No, as long as he doesn't catch a cold and be exposed to the cold wind, he'll be fine. Remember, you must use warm water when you bathe. Even if you're washing your face, you can't touch anything cold. When Jingyang heard this, his heart skipped a beat. At night. The night gradually darkened. Jingqi hugged him and lay on the bed, sleeping soundly. In the middle of the night, Jingyang slowly opened his eyes and sensed that his mother, who was sleeping beside him, was already breathing deeply. He knew that she was sleeping soundly. Hence, he quietly sat up, got out of bed, and carefully walked to the bathroom. Then, he quickly took off his clothes, stood under the shower, and turned on the cold water. Whoosh, the cold water poured down. Jingyang hugged his arms and shivered from the cold water. There were only a few words from the nurse in his mind. Don't catch a cold. Don't be exposed to the cold wind. Even if you're washing your face, you can't touch anything cold. Then, what the nurse meant was that as long as he caught a cold, he could fall sick again. Thinking of this, even though the water was cold, he still gritted his teeth and endured it until his whole body was shaking. Only then did he walk out of the shower room and dry himself with a towel. Then, with wet hair, he walked to the small garden behind the impatient building and jogged in the cold wind. After running, he was covered in sweat. He walked to the shower and continued to wash his body with cold water. The next day, the moment Jingqi woke up, she sensed the slightly rapid breathing beside her. She raised her head and saw Jing Yang nestled in her arms with a red face. Even the breath he exhaled at this moment was boiling hot. She was scared out of her wits and quickly touched his face. It was so hot that she jumped in fright. Why was it so hot? Didn't the nurse say that the fever was almost gone? Why did the fever return? At this age, it was easy for a fever to recur. However, after getting an injection to reduce the fever in the hospital, the nurse and the doctor said that it would not recur again. This sudden relapse made Jing Qi not mentally prepared at all. She had thought that she would recover soon. Chapter 4496. In his groggy consciousness, he could not wait to see if his efforts last night had succeeded. The nurse did not know what his intentions were, so she pressed down on his little hand and carefully stuffed the thermometer into his mouth. What's going on? The nurse looked at Jing Yang worriedly, her heart aching. It looks like his fever is very bad. That's impossible. Didn't his fever go down yesterday? Didn't he cover himself with the blanket last night? That's impossible. Jing Qi said. I only dared to sleep when I saw him fall asleep. Moreover, our Yang doesn't have the habit of kicking the blanket. Then why did his fever relapse? The nurse felt extremely worried. Jing Yang's head was about to split open. Last night, he seemed to have been drenched too much, so much so that he felt as if he was being burned. Even his lips seemed to be scalded by the air that he kept exhaling from his nose. However, even with that being the case, he still felt his body shivering non-stop. Jing Yang was looking forward to it. If he had a fever again, then he would be able to accompany his little Yu Yarrow in the hospital. At the thought of being able to play with his little Yu Yarrow, the pain he suffered was nothing. If Jing Qi and the nurse knew that the little guy they were taking care of was asking for this pain, they would definitely be so angry that they did not know whether to laugh or cry. The nurse pulled out the thermometer and looked at the red line. She gasped in shock. Oh my God, 39.8 degrees. Why is his fever so high? It's even higher than the temperature measured when he entered the hospital. When Jing Qi heard this, she also became worried. Coincidentally, the flu had been more frequent recently. She asked worriedly, could he have contracted the flu? That's impossible. Other than the high fever, there don't seem to be any other similar characteristics. Then, why does it keep going back and forth? Before coming to the hospital, because the fever was not high, he had been using a fever patch. In addition, the nearest children's hospital had prescribed medicine. However, the fever kept going back and forth, and it was getting worse and worse. Jing Qi was worried that it was the flu and was sent to a big hospital. The nurse said, let's get an injection to reduce the fever first. I'll get the chief doctor to come over personally in the afternoon. Okay. Hearing that he had a fever again, the corners of Jing Yang's mouth curled up in relief. Then, he almost fainted and lost consciousness. When he woke up again, he was already on an intravenous drip. Because the infusion policy had become strict, especially for children, it was not easy to get infusions. But his fever was too high. The feeling of having a fever was really unpleasant. This time, it was worse than any fever in the past. But he didn't regret it. His only regret was that he had imagined that he would still be able to walk around freely after his fever. He had even gone to the little Yueyao's room to play with the little Yu Yao. However, he did not even have the strength to get out of bed. He had obviously miscalculated. He thought that he had deliberately showered in cold water and was only suffering from a fever and a headache. He didn't expect that he would be so weak now. Yu Yarrow, on the other hand, sweated a lot after taking a walk in the back garden yesterday. His temperature had dropped a little, but he still coughed a little. Yun Shusha originally thought that Jing Yang would be discharged today, but she heard that the little guy had a fever again, so she carried the little Yu Yao over to have a look. Chapter 4497. Yun Shusha was also shocked by Jing Yang's flushed face. What happened? She walked over worriedly with Yu Yarrow in her arms. Her heart ached as she looked at Jing Yang. Why is he burning up again? I don't know. When I woke up, his fever flared up again. His whole body is burning up and he's in a daze from the fever. He can't even speak coherently. Their conversation alarmed Jing Yang. He opened his eyes and saw Yu Yao. He immediately reached out to grab her. Little Yu Yao looked at him and then at Yun Shusha. She seemed to be using her gaze to ask what was going on. Yun Shusha patted her head and said, "Little brother is sick. He wants you to keep him company." Yu Yao nodded and walked to the bedside. She pushed a stool clumsily to Jing Yang's side and then climbed onto the stool and sat down. Jing Yang was in a daze. He raised his little hand and saw Yue Yao's after images. His fever was so high that he was seeing things and people like a spy. Yu Yao also stretched out her hand and gently clasped his. She immediately felt his small, scalding hand. "It's so hot." Yue Yao's voice was crisp and childish. "His hand feels like a hot water bottle. Little brother is sick. He has a fever, just like Yu Yao." "But Yue Yao's hand isn't this hot," Yu Yao said. Yu Yao was a little disappointed when she heard that Jing Yang was sick. She was bored in the hospital. She missed her daddy. Mu Yaja came once at night. But when he came, Yu Yao had already taken her medicine and gone to bed early. He stayed at the hospital for a night and then went to work at dawn. At that time, Yu Yao was still asleep. Hence, Yu Yao missed Mu Yaja and wanted to go home as soon as she recovered. But she thought that she could play with Jing Yang while she was sick in the hospital. She liked to play with Jing Yang, because she felt that Jing Yang was very interesting. However, now that Jing Yang had fallen ill, she was left all alone again. Yue Yao's face was full of disappointment. Jing Yang opened his eyes, then closed them weakly. He struggled to sit up, but after a few attempts, it was to no avail. He didn't even have the strength to sit up, much less play in the garden with Yu Yao. How disappointing. "All right, let's not disturb little brother. Let's just keep him company quietly, okay?" Yu Yao raised her head and suddenly thought of something. Yu Yao wants to tell little brother a story. "Okay." Yu Yao ran back to the room with a 3D fairytale book. 3D Fairytales SSSSS Fairytales Ints. It was a series of fairytale storybooks developed by Laji Holdings. Li Hanlin gave Yun Shusha a set. Usually, a fairytale would be divided into 3 volumes. Each volume was extremely heavy. Yu Yao had a hard time carrying one. The book she carried over was Sleeping Beauty. Yu Yao liked it very much. Almost every time before going to bed, she would let Yun Shusha read this book. She never got tired of it. Towards the end, she could almost memorize it herself. Children at this age were very passionate about things and stories that they loved. It was just like watching cartoons. They would watch them repeatedly. Yun Shusha was helpless. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But there was nothing she could do. Chapter 4498. "Let me read it to you, okay?" Jing Yang nodded gently. He was already very happy to have her by his side. Yu Yao climbed onto the bed and leaned closer to him. Then, he opened the book in front of him and flipped to the first page. A vivid 3-dimensional castle was displayed in front of him. Jing Yang had never seen such a gorgeous 3-dimensional book before, and his gaze was slightly surprised. The castle had a pulling effect. He gently pushed and pulled a mechanism, and with the pushing and pulling effect, 2 paper figures appeared on the castle. They were the king and queen. "This is the king, and this is the queen." After Yu Yao introduced them in a serious manner, he said tirelessly, "In the past, there was a king and queen who never had children. They were very sad and distressed because of this." Jing Yang interrupted curiously, "Why didn't they have children?" Yu Yao was stumped by this question. "Oh, I know." Jing Yang remembered that he had seen an advertisement before. Infertility? However, Yu Yao had never heard of this unfamiliar word before. He looked at Yun Shusha in surprise. Yun Shusha almost burst out laughing. Jing Qi was very embarrassed at the side. She secretly felt helpless about why her son had asked such an idiotic question. Yun Shusha asked with a red face, "How did he know about infertility?" "Ah. When he followed me to buy groceries, some people would post advertisements for gynecological hospitals. Moreover, on TV, there would also be advertisements for infertility. He can read a little." "He can read at such a young age?" "Yes. I've taught him pinyin since he was young. He likes to read very much." When he has nothing to do, he will flip through the dictionary. He can read and write many words. That's amazing. Yuyaro suddenly tugged at Yoon Shusha's sleeve. Mommy, what's infertility? Nothing, nothing. Yoon Shusha quickly changed the topic and said to Jing Yang, let Sister Yuyaro continue telling the story, okay? Okay. Yuyaro turned his head and turned another page of the fairy tale book. Two three-dimensional figures appeared by a river. Yuyaro fiddled with a small mechanism, and a fish floated to the surface of the water. Jing Yang exclaimed in surprise. He was instantly energized. Your wish will come true. You will give birth to a daughter soon, Yuyaro said, and another night passed. In the room of the castle, the queen was holding a baby, and the king came to her side. After some time, the situation that the little fish predicted really came true. The queen really gave birth to a very beautiful daughter. The king was so happy that he could not put it down and decided to hold a big banquet. Yuyaro flipped through the night, and suddenly, an evil witch appeared, bearing fangs and brandishing claws. Not only did he invite his relatives, friends, and foreign guests, but he also invited almost all the witches to send their kind wishes to his daughter. There were a total of 13 witches in his kingdom, and he only had 12 golden plates to entertain them, so he only invited 12 witches, leaving one uninvited. Jing Yang nodded when he heard that. Chapter 4499. When the 11th witch had just blessed her, the 13th witch, the one who wasn't invited, came in. She was very angry that she wasn't invited. She wanted to take revenge by offering her vicious spells. So when she came in, she shouted, the king's daughter will be hurt by a spindle at the age of 15 and finally die. Jing Yang was dumbfounded when he heard that. No one had ever told him such a fairy tale since he was a child. In the Mu family, Yoon Shusha had been continuing the tradition of bedtime stories. When Yuyaro was very young, she was very happy to tell her some fairy tales. Yuyaro and Yo-Yo were different. Yo-Yo didn't like to listen to fairy tales. She just listened to Yoon Shusha's voice and fell asleep peacefully. But Yuyaro really liked to listen to these fairy tales. Later on, Yuyu designed a series of 3D books for her. Yuyaro loved these exquisite 3D books so much that she could not put them down. She listened to Sleeping Beauty no less than 10 times, but she didn't get tired of it. Jing Yang listened with relish, and from time to time, he asked some questions that made Yuyaro feel helpless. Is there really such a witch in the world? Is the princess dead? Many questions always made Yuyaro feel helpless. In the end, Yoon Shusha personally came forward to answer. On the side, Jing Qi praised, little Yueyao's storytelling ability is too strong. Generally, children of this age are generally not clever. Yoon Shusha smiled and said, Yuyaro doesn't speak very well. It's just that she has heard these stories too many times, so she can speak so fluently. Yuyaro lay on the bed and turned a page of the book. A castle shrouded in darkness. In the gorgeous floor-to-ceiling window, there was the figure of the princess lying on the bed. When she was 15 years old, the past and the queen were not there. The princess was left alone in the palace. She walked around the palace, looking at all the big and small rooms. Finally, she came to an ancient palace. Inside the palace there was a narrow staircase, at the end of which was a door with a golden key. When she turned the golden key, the door sprang open, and an old woman sat inside, busily spinning. When the princess saw her, she said, "Hello, Granny." "Spinning," replied the old woman, nodding her head. "What are you doing?" "Spinning," replied the old woman, nodding her head. "This little thing is really interesting when it spins." Then, the princess stepped forward and tried to pick up the spindle, but as soon as she touched it, she immediately fell to the ground and lost consciousness. The old spell really came true. Is the princess unconscious? Not only the princess, but all the people in the castle, including the horses and dogs, the tall people on the roof, the flies on the walls, and the rats in the holes, all fell asleep. The past and the queen have returned. Didn't a kind witch say that this dangerous spell would indeed come true, but the princess would be able to avert the danger? She won't die, she'll just fall asleep, and she'll sleep for 100 years. That's right. The entire castle is surrounded by hedges. Many princes came to explore, but they were all blocked by the hedges. Yu Yaro saw that Jing Yang was engrossed in listening and felt smug. Chapter 4500. Yun Shusha and Jing Qi watched the two little guys quietly. Yu Yaro was talking enthusiastically, and Jing Yang was also fascinated. For a while, he didn't feel sleepy. After telling the story, Jing Yang had already closed his eyes in a daze. After hearing that the princess was finally woken up by the prince's kiss, he also fell asleep peacefully. It's just a fairy tale. Jing Qi lowered her voice and said, "Look, children are so easily satisfied. Even if it's a perfect ending in a fairy tale, he can sleep peacefully. The world of children is innocent and simple. They're easy to satisfy." As Yun Shusha spoke, she picked up Yu Yaro and said to her, "It's time for you to take a nap." "Okay." Yu Yaro rubbed her eyes. It was obvious that she was sleepy. She yawned loudly and let Yun Shusha carry her to sleep. In the afternoon, Yo-Yo and Xiaochen finally rushed over. When they found out that Yu Yaro was sick, they rushed back without stopping for a moment. When they found out that Yueyao's fever was gradually subsiding, Yo-Yo and Xiaochen breathed a sigh of relief. The two of them guarded Yu Yaro on both sides. Looking at Yueyao's peaceful sleeping face, Yo-Yo felt especially sorry for her. "I feel that sister's face doesn't seem so rosy anymore. She has been injected with fever reducers for 2 days in a row. She has suffered a lot. Wouldn't it be too boring for Yu Yaro to stay in the hospital alone?" Yo-Yo said dejectedly, "I should have rushed back earlier, but I thought that as long as I came back before Yueyao's birthday, it would be fine. I didn't expect Yu Yaro to suddenly fall sick. The temperature difference during the change of seasons is huge, and she has the habit of kicking the quilt." Yun Shusha paused for a moment before continuing, "However, Yu Yaro has been fine these few days in the hospital. She's not bored. There's a little brother around her age who's playing with her." "Little brother?" When Yo-Yo and Xiaochen heard this, they immediately became alert. Where did this little brother come from? Yun Shusha was stunned. It can't be. These two fellows, were they even jealous of this kind of thing? That kid is just next door. Whoosh! Yo-Yo and Xiaochen disappeared into the next room at lightning speed. The door to the room was ajar. Jing Qi went to prepare the medicine. Yo-Yo and Xiaochen gently pushed the door open and saw a child with delicate features lying quietly on the bed with an 4 drip. His fever was too serious, and some of his tonsils were inflamed. He had to be put on a drip to reduce the inflammation. In order to find out who was trying to kidnap his sister, Yo-Yo slipped into the ward and saw a familiar name on the pathology report on the table. Jing Yang. It's him. Yo-Yo walked to the side of the bed and took a look. No wonder he felt that this child was very familiar, as if he had seen him somewhere before. "Ah, it's him." Yo-Yo suddenly remembered. Xiaochen asked curiously, "You know him?" "Yes. Do you know who Jiyu Xingze donated his cornea to?" "Could it be him?" "Yes. I remember that the child's name is Jing Yang. I've seen that child before and I remember his eyes. Although his facial features have changed a lot, his eyes haven't changed at all." Chapter 4501. As soon as Yo-Yo finished speaking, Xiaochen could not help but flick him on the head. "You still have the cheek to call others children? You're a child too, okay? How dare you use such an old-fashioned tone?" Yo-Yo glared at him and bounced back. "I'm older than him, okay? You're saying that he's the recipient of Uncle Xingze's cornea?" "Yes." For some reason, Xiaochen was filled with emotions. This world is too small. I also heard that Uncle Xingze donated his cornea to a child. It's said that he has a congenital corneal defect. Initially, Yo-Yo and Xiaochen were filled with righteous indignation towards this brat who wanted to abduct their sister. However, when they found out that Jing Yang was the child who had received Jiyu Xingze's cornea, they could not resist for a moment. For some reason, they believed that Jiyu Xingze had not disappeared. Instead, he had always been there. However, through the cornea donation, his life had been extended. And Jing Yang was proof that he still existed. In the afternoon, Jing Yang finally woke up. Jing Qi sat beside him, but her expression was no longer as loving as before. Instead, it was surprisingly serious. "You're awake." Jing Yang looked at her interrogative expression and felt a little uneasy. "What's wrong?" Mom. Answer Mom's question honestly. Yes, did you sleep obediently by Mom's side last night? Jing Yang had never lied, and he did not like to lie. However, even if he did not lie about this matter, he could not admit that he did not sleep obediently by his mother's side. Jing Yang hugged the blanket and covered half of his face. He hummed guiltily. Mom doesn't like children who lie. Mom, I'm not lying. Then, a nurse told me that in the middle of the night, she stood on the balcony and saw you running around the back garden. Jing Yang was so scared that he burped. He had been discovered. And, Jing Qi grabbed the wet hospital gown that Jing Yang had hidden in the bathroom and asked even more seriously, "What's going on? Why is this gown so wet?" There were a total of 2 sets of hospital gowns in the hospital. Early in the morning, Jing Qi planned to wash Jing Yang's hospital gown, but she couldn't find it. In the end, she found it in the corner of the bathroom, as if it had been deliberately hidden. Jing Yang felt even more guilty. He hid almost all of his face under the blanket, only revealing a pair of restless eyes. No one knows a child better than his mother. Jing Qi understood this child. He must have lied, but what was the purpose of lying? Also, why did he go jogging in the garden instead of sleeping well at night? Yang, answer me honestly. Where did you go last night? Did you catch a cold from playing in the garden last night? Jing Yang couldn't hide it any longer and could only nod silently. Why? Jing Qi was angry. Why don't you sleep obediently by Mommy's side? Because, Jing Yang pouted and said sadly, I want to be sick. I want to be hospitalized. Jing Qi was stunned. She had thought of countless answers, but she did not expect such an answer. Which child liked to be hospitalized, sick, and in the hospital? Chapter 4502. Jing Yang lowered his head and gently moved his lips. He then confessed in a lonely manner, I want to play with little Yu Yao. The nurse said that I'm about to recover and will be discharged today, but I don't want to. If I'm discharged, will I never be able to see her or play with her again? Jing Qi sighed helplessly. So it was because of this. So, this idiot didn't hesitate to get wet and run around the back garden in the cold wind in order to play with Yu Yao. She remembered. Yesterday, the nurse had mentioned in front of him not to be cold and not to be exposed to the cold wind. This guy knew how to apply what he learned. Jing Qi asked tentatively, do you like Sister Yu Yao so much? Jing Yang nodded excitedly. What do you like about her? She's so beautiful. Like a little princess. Phut! Jing Qi almost fell to the ground. So, it was because Yu Yao was good-looking? Did her son look at faces like this? What else? She tells me fairy tales. But you can't get sick just to play with her. Jing Yang immediately lowered his head guiltily. Mom, I know I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Jing Qi patted his head, feeling sorry for him. Don't do such a stupid thing again. Besides, even if you're discharged from the hospital, you can still play with Sister Yu Yao. Jing Yang's eyes widened in surprise. Really? Yes, when the time comes, Mom just needs to ask Yu Yao's mother for her contact information. When you're out of school and on vacation, Mom can take you to play with Sister Yu Yao. Okay. But before that, you have to recuperate. First, your fever has to go down. Okay. Jing Yang immediately obeyed and lay on the bed obediently like an obedient little angel. In the afternoon, Yu Yao woke up from her afternoon nap. As soon as she opened her eyes, she ignored her 2 older brothers and asked Yun Shusha to play with Jing Yang. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen were extremely hurt. This younger sister of his had completely ignored them. He didn't even notice their presence. Yun Shusha reminded her, Yu Yao, look who's back. It was only then that Yu Yao noticed Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen, who looked extremely disappointed. He was a little surprised. You guys are back. Idiot Yu Yao, did you just notice us? Yu Yao smiled, revealing her white teeth. She then turned around and asked Yun Shusha, Mommy, where's brother Yang Yang? Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen looked at each other. They were furious. They couldn't help but worry that when Yu Yao grew up and got a boyfriend, she would completely ignore her 2 older brothers. Xiao Ichen said, Yu Yao, can't you play with your older brother? Older brother isn't fun. Xiao Ichen was indignant. Which part of him isn't fun? Yu Yaro pouted and didn't know what to say for a moment. Yun Shusha looked at the two little lads who were jealous of Jing Yang. For a moment, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Yo-Yo stretched out his arms and wanted to hug Yu Yaro. Yu Yaro, let's play together, okay? Raise me high. No. Yu Yaro shook her head. I want to play with brother Jing Yang. Yo-Yo smiled awkwardly and secretly blacklisted Jing Yang. Chapter 4503. Mom, is brother Yang Yang awake? I think so. He's probably on an 4 drip now. When Yu Yaro heard this, she immediately lifted the blanket. Then I'll go play with him. Hey, wait. Yun Shusha called out to her and said reproachfully, don't run so fast. What if you fall? I know. Bring this orange to brother Yang Yang. Yun Shusha had inadvertently heard Jing Qi mention that Jing Yang especially liked to eat oranges. Okay. Yu Yaro obediently took the orange and ran to the ward next door. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen looked at each other. They could see in each other's eyes the grievance of being neglected by their beloved little sister. You can't be alone with that rascal like your little sister. Xiao Ichen leaned over and muttered to Yo-Yo, otherwise, what if little sister is kidnapped by that rascal? When Yo-Yo heard this, she instantly became nervous. Her expression turned serious, but she also felt that it made sense. We can't let them be so close to each other and improve their relationship for nothing. Xiao Ichen added fuel to the fire by Yo-Yo's ear. You have to know that many childhood sweethearts cultivate their relationship from a young age. Okay. Anyway, let's go over and watch over little sister. If that rascal dares to flirt with her, I'll definitely teach him a lesson. Xiao Ichen and Yo-Yo instantly had a tacit understanding that they had a common enemy. It was as if they were brewing something big. Yun Shusha didn't know what the two little buns were mumbling to each other, but she saw that they looked nervous and alert. Before Yun Shusha could finish asking, Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen walked to the ward next door. Yun Shusha was speechless. Why did these two rascals look like they were going to catch adultery? When they arrived at the ward next door, Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen entered. They saw Yu Yaro sitting by the bed with an orange in her hands. Jing Yang was leaning against the headboard with an 4 drip in his hand. I'll dial it for you. Yu Yaro held up the orange and said proudly, I've seen how my mommy peels an orange. Yu Yaro can do it too. When Yu Yaro walked in, Jing Yang had just finished changing his 4 drip. She knew that he was still on an 4 drip and couldn't peel the orange. However, when she saw Jing Yang's greedy expression, she volunteered to peel the orange for him. When Xiao Ichen saw this, his nostrils flared. He had never eaten an orange peeled by his sister. Come on. Nothing. Yes. Even Yo-Yo and Mommy had never enjoyed such special treatment from Hu Yaro. How could Jing Yang have the upper hand? Xiao Ichen felt that his position in Hu Yaro's heart was being threatened. He walked over and pouted as he said to Yu Yaro, I want to eat an orange too. Yu Yaro and Jing Yang were looking at each other sweetly when Xiao Ichen appeared at the wrong time. Yu Yaro then realized that Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen were also in the ward. She asked in a childish voice, why are you here? We knew you were sick, so we rushed back. But when you saw us, you ignored us. Yu Yaro imitated Yun Shusha's tone and lectured them, you're already so old. Do you still need me to play with you? Seriously. Jing Yang found Yueao's tone amusing and couldn't help but laugh. Xiao Ichen's eyes were almost spitting fire. What are you laughing at? Chapter 4504. Jing Yang immediately stopped smiling. Yo-Yo stared blankly at the orange in Yueao's hand. She pouted and said coquettishly, Yu Yao, why aren't you peeling the orange for big brother? I'll peel the orange first. Yueao's little hand gently rubbed the orange until the peel loosened. Then, she gently dug her index finger into the center of the orange and carefully peeled the peel. She peeled the orange very carefully. Her fair and adorable fingers peeled off the peel bit by bit. As the orange had been rubbed properly, it was very thin. When she finished peeling the orange, Yu Yaro was surprisingly patient. Bit by bit, she peeled off the white peel on the fruit pouch. The white peel was edible, but it affected the texture slightly. Every time Yun Shusha peeled an orange for Yu Yao, she would peel off the white peel bit by bit. This made the texture even sweeter and more perfect. Yu Yao imitated Yun Shusha's actions and slowly tore off the white fruit along the lines. However, this process was extremely long. Moreover, Yu Yao's fingers weren't very nimble. She peeled and paused for a while. Before they knew it, 5 minutes had passed and she had only peeled off half of the peel. If it had been any other time, Xiao Chen would have lost his patience. However, since the person peeling the orange was Yu Yao, he was happy to be patient. Yo-Yo, Jingyang, and Xiao Chen stared fixedly at Yu Yao as she peeled the peel. It was as though just watching her peel the white peel was exceptionally interesting. Finally, I'm done peeling. Yu Yao proudly waved the peeled orange in front of the three of them. Look, I'm done peeling it. Xiao Chen and Yo-Yo stretched out their hands at almost the same time. However, Yu Yao quickly retracted her hands. This orange isn't for you guys. Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen's fragile hearts were about to shatter when they heard this. If it's not for us, then who is it for? Mommy said that big brother Yang Yang likes to eat oranges. As Yu Yao spoke, she peeled the orange in half and prepared to divide it into pieces for Jingyang to eat. Jingyang's hand was on an 4 drip, so Yu Yao was about to feed him. This was a special treatment that Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen could only wish for. Xiao Chen panicked and began to whine. Yu Yao, I want some too. Why aren't you giving it to big brother? Yu could not care less about being reserved. This was the first orange Yu Yao had peeled in her life. It had an incomparably special meaning. It was as if this was not an ordinary orange, but a century-old longevity fruit. It was as if eating this longevity fruit would make one immortal. However, Yu Yao couldn't bear to give it to them. Instead, she passed the fruit to Jingyang. However, Jingyang didn't dare to reach out to take it. This was because Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen, the two siscons, were staring at him covetously. It was as if the two of them would pounce on him if he reached out to take it. Jingyang swallowed awkwardly and said quietly, "Why don't we have a competition? Whoever wins gets to eat the orange peeled by Yu Yao. What do you think?" Xiao Chen immediately perked up when she heard that Jingyang wanted to play a game with them. "Tell me, what game?" "I don't want to play if it's too easy." Jingyang said, "How about playing one half?" When Yo-Yo heard this, she didn't think much of it. TSK, childish. Chapter 4505. Are you scared? You don't dare to compete with me? Jingyang said proudly, "I'm very good at playing wooden dummies." "Are you trying to provoke me?" Yo-Yo raised her eyebrows. "I won't fall for it. If you don't accept the challenge, then you're giving up." Jingyang pretended to take the tangerine. "Then this tangerine is mine." "Wait." Xiao Chen was anxious. "Isn't it just a game of wooden dummies? Let's compete." "I'm not afraid of you." "Sure." Jingyang sat up calmly. "Come on, who wants to compete with me first?" "Me." Xiao Chen's desire to win was aroused. He sat down on the bed. 3, 3, 4, 4. We're both wooden dummies. Don't talk and don't move." As soon as he finished speaking, Jingyang and Xiao Chen looked at each other motionlessly as if they had been petrified. Xiao Chen was known for his impatience. Although he was able to keep his composure at first, after a minute, his eyes suddenly became very sore and he only dared to blink gently. Yo-Yo's mouth twitched when she saw the two of them looking at such a boring game so seriously. They were playing so seriously. Moreover, when they said they couldn't move, they really couldn't move at all. This game was very simple in the beginning. As long as they didn't move, there would be no problem. However, once they sat for a long time, their necks would become sore, their shoulders would swell, and their bodies would itch terribly. Especially when the wind blew in through the window, it didn't feel very cold through the thin layer of clothes. However, Xiao Chen could clearly feel the wind blowing into his eyes. It was itchy, dry, and teary. He wanted to rub his eyes, but if he did, it would be obvious that he was the one who moved first. He would lose. Hence, he deliberately widened his eyes until they turned red. He gritted his teeth and persisted until he was unwilling to give up. On the other hand, this game of wooden dummies was very easy for Jingyang. It was his best game. He had been born with a cornea defect since he was a child. This meant that he had been immersed in darkness for a long time as a baby. Babies also had curiosity. Being trapped in the darkness for a long time, they would also be curious about the outside world. However, due to the prolonged darkness, he had to keep his eyes open for a long time. Even if he didn't blink, he wouldn't feel any discomfort. Jing Yang had never lost to anyone in this game of wooden dummies. Xiao Chen was no exception. 10 minutes later, Xiao Chen finally couldn't hold it in any longer. He blinked his eyes. Initially, he wanted to pretend that he didn't blink, but Jing Yang found out. I saw it. You blinked. Xiao Chen rubbed his eyes awkwardly. This guy's eyes were really sharp. He had blinked so quickly, but he had been discovered. So boring. Even though Xiao Chen was unwilling to admit defeat, he had no choice but to admit defeat. He and Jing Yang had been glaring at each other for a long time. Their eyes were bloodshot, so much so that they looked extremely red. Yo-Yo, compare yourself to him. Xiao Chen was still annoyed. If I had persisted just now, I wouldn't have lost. Mph, I can't let him get away with this. When Yo-Yo heard this, he sat on the bed in disdain and faced Jing Yang. I'll compete with you. Jing Yang smiled. It didn't matter who competed with him. Chapter 4506. Initially, he had thought that this game was extremely boring. However, for the sake of the orange peeled by Yu Yaro, Jing Yang was willing to do anything. 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, we're all blockheads. Don't talk and don't move. Yu and Jing Yang did not move an inch after that. Xiao Ichen considerately closed the window. If the window had not been open, he would not have lost so badly. At that time, he wanted to remind Yo-Yo to close the window. However, he could not move his mouth or speak. He hinted many times, but Yo-Yo did not even notice him. Hence, he gave up. However, since Yo-Yo was going to compete with Jing Yang, he had to close the window to prevent the same thing from happening. After the window was closed, the ward suddenly became quiet and there was no more wind. Jing Yang calmly opened his eyes and stared at Yo-Yo without moving. Xiao Chen suddenly thought of playing tricks. He sneaked behind Yo-Yo and rubbed his nose. He made funny faces and racked his brains to make Jing Yang laugh. However, Jing Yang did not even look at him. Did he have no presence at all? Xiao Chen stuck out his tongue. However, no matter how he tried to provoke him or make him laugh, Jing Yang did not react. He only stared at Yo-Yo silently. The two of them stared at each other for more than 10 minutes. Oh God! For more than 10 minutes, he did not move at all. Xiao Chen thought that it would be over in 3 minutes at most. He was such a restless person. Making him sit in the same place without moving was undoubtedly a torturous torture. However, it was not a problem for Jing Yang at all. It seemed that he had underestimated this kid called Jing Yang. He stared at Yo-Yo without moving an inch. Just like that, another half an hour passed. Xiao Chen did not know how many times he had yawned. Yu Yaro looked at Jing Yang and then at Yo-Yo. He also felt bored. Don't compete anymore. Jing Yang and Yo-Yo did not reply. They were still holding their breaths. Jing Qi came back with hot water and saw the two children sitting face to face, motionless like statues. She felt strange. When she saw that Jing Yang's infusion bottle had been hung up, she rushed over and rang the bell. The nurse rushed over. As soon as the nurse entered the room, she was also confused by this scene. What's wrong with the two children? Jing Qi was also stunned. I don't know what happened either. When I came back with hot water, I saw the two of them sitting facing each other without saying anything. Shi Xiaochen reminded Jing Qi not to speak. They're playing games. What game? 123 blockhead, whoever moves or speaks will lose. Wooden man. Jing Qi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why are these two kids playing such a boring game? Xiao Ichen explained, whoever wins will be able to eat Yuyaro peeled oranges and enjoy the treatment of a national guest. This was not an exaggeration at all. Whether it was Xiao Ichen or Yo-Yo, Yueyao's first personally peeled oranges in his life was simply a luxurious national guest treatment. Otherwise, Yo-Yo, who had always been mature and steady, would not be willing to play this game with Jing Yang. He was very serious. This game was too childish for him. However, for the sake of Yueyao's oranges, he did not care about his reputation. Another 10 minutes passed. Chapter 4507. Another 10 minutes passed. Yo-Yo's eyes were visibly redder and he didn't dare to blink. Jing Yang wasn't any better. He stared and somehow became cross-eyed. Jing Yang didn't notice it, but Xiao Chen wanted to laugh when he saw it. However, he was afraid that his laughter would affect Yo-Yo's performance. After all, laughter was contagious. Hence, Xiao Chen tried his best not to laugh. However, even though he could control himself, Yo-Yo might not be able to do the same. He and Jing Yang were sitting opposite each other. Hence, he could see Jing Yang's adorable cross-eyed expression. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. He really wanted to laugh. However, he couldn't control himself anymore. Yo-Yo tried his best to control himself. Yun Shusha rushed over. When she saw this scene, she couldn't help but walk over and scratch the soles of their feet. Wahahaha. Fat. Ha 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 ha. The two little guys couldn't control themselves and were already on the verge of breaking down. Now that Yun Shusha had scratched the soles of their feet, they couldn't control themselves anymore. Mommy. Yo-Yo regained his serious expression and turned to look at her angrily. Why are you scratching the soles of my feet? Stupid teammate. When did I become your teammate? Yun Shusha didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she said, when I walked in, I saw the two of you staring at each other. Jing Yang's eyes were almost cross-eyed. Jing Yang and Yo-Yo asked in unison, who's the big-eyed one and who's the small-eyed one? At this moment, the two of them seemed to have a tacit understanding. Yo-Yo said in disdain, of course I'm the big-eyed one. Your eyes aren't as big as mine. But my eyes are definitely not small either. Anyway, my mommy said that I'm the big-eyed one and you're the small-eyed one. Yo-Yo, who had always been cold and aloof, was angered by Jing Yang and argued with him like a childish child. At the side, Yun Shusha suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. They could even argue over such a childish question as who was the bigger eye and who was the smaller eye. Wasn't this a little too exaggerated? Yuyaro held the peeled orange and was dumbfounded. When Yo-Yo saw this, he immediately walked over. His arrogant attitude towards Jing Yang was gone. Instead, he gently squeezed her little paws. Yuyao, can you give the orange in your hand to Big Brother to eat? Yuyaro recovered and looked at Yo-Yo before looking at Jing Yang. Then, she said softly, no. Not good. Not good, not good. Yo-Yo's handsome face twisted. It was as if he had been frozen. Yuyaro carried the orange and walked to Jing Yang's side. She smiled at Jing Yang and said, this orange was originally for Big Brother Jing Yang. This orange was originally for Big Brother Jing Yang. This orange was originally for Big Brother Jing Yang. This sentence kept echoing in Yo-Yo's ears. Jing Yang took the orange in a daze. He broke it in half and gave one half to Yuyao. The two of them looked at each other and smiled warmly. Yo-Yo half knelt on the ground as if he had been struck by lightning. He supported himself with both hands as if he had suffered a great blow. Xiao Chen didn't know why, but when he saw Yo-Yo breaking down, he wanted to laugh. Chapter 4508. He walked over, knelt on one knee, and patted his shoulder gently. It's just a tangerine. Do you have to be so dramatic? A tangerine? Yo-Yo suddenly clenched his fists and stood up. He said angrily, is this just a tangerine's problem? Xiao Chen was speechless. What other problems could there be? This is a matter of status, dumbass. Yo-Yo turned his head and looked at the two people who were having a good time. Jing Yang and Yuyaro were eating tangerines, laughing as they fed each other. That scene stung a certain someone's eyes. I'm going crazy. At night, Mu Yaja arrived at the ward. The first thing he saw was not Yuyaro, who was sitting on the bed reading a comic book. Instead, he saw Yo-Yo sitting on the sofa in the corner. The reason why he noticed him at first glance was because he could feel the endless resentment coming from him the moment he entered the room. Yo-Yo crossed his arms and leaned against the sofa. He looked out of the window as though he had been petrified. Who was the one who was sick? Mu Yaja pointed at Yo-Yo and looked at Yun Shusha. He asked in surprise, "What's wrong with him? Is he sick?" "He seems fine." Yoon Shusha said helplessly, "Your son is fine. He's not sick. Then why does he look so gloomy?" This, Yoon Shusha touched her nose and waved at him as though she wanted to whisper something to him. Mu Yaja leaned over curiously. "He's obviously jealous." "Jealous?" Mu Yaja was confused. "Who is he jealous of?" "Yu Yao." Yoon Shusha told him everything that happened in the afternoon. Mu Yaja's lips twitched when he heard this. "It's just a tangerine. Why is this guy so useless?" But the first time Yu Yaro peeled an orange, he personally asked her for one. In the end, Yu Yaro didn't give it to him and gave it to Jing Yang. Yo-Yo was obviously jealous. Mu Yaja looked at his son with disdain. "That's his sister, not his wife." "Sister complex," Yoon Shusha said calmly. As a father, how could he not know that his son is a sister complex? You know that Yo-Yo loves Yu Yaro the most, and Yu Yaro has always had a special place in Yo-Yo's heart. Yu Yaro also loves Yo-Yo the most. But, ever since Jing Yang appeared, it seems like Yo-Yo's position in Yu Yao's heart has changed. How is this possible? Mu Yaja didn't think much of it. He's thinking too much. That's what I told him, but he refused to listen. Since this afternoon, he has been curled up in a corner. He's been in a bad mood. What about Yu Yaro? Yu Yaro said that she wants to read more fairy tales. Then, she'll tell Jing Yang stories. Mu Yaja's lips twitched again. No wonder Yo-Yo was in such a bad mood. Yu Yaro was really good to Jing Yang. Even he found it a little strange. "Oh yes, be careful. Try not to let Yo-Yo and Xiao Chen catch a cold." Yoon Shusha regained her composure. "What's wrong?" Chapter 4509. Quarantine? Yoon Shusha suddenly became nervous. Is it that serious? Then, what about Yu Yaro? Will Yu Yaro catch the flu? It is said that there are a few suspected cases in this hospital. Of course, this is internal news. The Ministry of Health does not dare to make a big deal out of it. They are still analyzing the degree of contagion for fear of causing panic among the public. Of course, regardless of whether it is true or not, don't go anywhere other than the ward. Oh, I understand. Yoon Shusha nodded. For the past 2 days, Yu Yaro had been very obedient. Initially, she wanted to go to the back garden with Jing Yang to play. However, because she was worried about the flu, she asked Yu Yaro and Jing Yang not to go anywhere outside the ward. Yu Yaro read a lot of fairy tales at night. Although she was still young, she had already started to learn how to read. Moreover, the comic books had pinyin, so she learned a lot of new stories and told them to Jing Yang. Yo-Yo became even more depressed these days and fell ill. It was not because she was too sad that she fell ill, but because she caught a cold. Yoon Shusha became alert and asked the doctor about the cause. Because it was sudden, the doctor was not sure. Hence, he took a blood sample and said that the results would only be out in 2 or 3 days. In these 2 or 3 days, Xiao Chen also fell ill. In addition, another child that Yoon Shusha did not expect was also sent to the hospital. "It's you." Yoon Shusha stood in the corridor and looked at Chu Ho, who was holding a hot water bottle. She was so shocked that she could not speak. Chu Ho was also a little surprised to see her. "Why are you here?" Yoon Shusha frowned and said, "The 3 children are sick. They caught a cold and are hospitalized now." Chu Ho immediately became nervous when he heard this. "The 3 children are sick. They all caught a cold?" "Yes." Yoon Shusha asked again, "What about you?" Xiao Bao caught a cold and was hospitalized. The doctor said that he might have contracted a new type of influenza and is now in a semi-isolated state." "So serious?" "Yes. Haven't you noticed that many children are inexplicably hospitalized with a cold? The 4 major children's hospitals in Beijing were all overcrowded, and there was a shortage of beds. It's a change of season, and the weather has been fluctuating between hot and cold recently. When Xiao Bao caught a cold at first, I didn't take it to heart and kept asking the family doctor to give him injections and medicine. But after a week, he suddenly had a fever. I was really worried, so I wanted to send him to an authoritative hospital. Unexpectedly, the doctor said that he might have contracted a new type of influenza. I heard that there are already deaths in another children's hospital. Death cases. Yoon Shusha was shocked. She had been following the news, but she had never heard of any deaths. Why haven't I heard about it? I'm quite concerned about this matter. It's the news from this morning. There will probably be a report tonight. Chu-ho asked with concern, are the 3 little guys okay? We've already taken a blood sample and submitted it for testing. Because the hospital has been overcrowded recently, many doctors have been temporarily transferred to other hospitals. The test results will probably only be available in a few days. So we can't be sure if they have contracted the influenza. Chapter 45:10. Fortunately, Qianqian and Rue have not had much contact with Xiao Bao. Otherwise, the doctor said that such a young child would not be able to withstand the influenza virus. His life might be in danger. Yoon Shusha felt a lingering fear when she heard this. It was not that she did not notice it, but who would have thought that a new type of influenza virus would suddenly appear? She also noticed that there were a lot of children hospitalized recently. Moreover, the symptoms were surprisingly similar. They all started with a simple cold, followed by a high fever that did not subside. It would always recur. It would clearly subside, but the fever would return. No one thought that it was the flu. Lin Shi always slept in the same room as Xiao Bao, but Qianqian and Rue slept in another room. However, Chu-ho was still very nervous. He asked an authoritative doctor to take a look at him personally. After the doctor confirmed that there was no problem, Chu-ho was relieved. However, Xiao Bao is already in a state of semi-quarantine. It seems that the new type of influenza is real. We'll just have to wait for the announcement. Semi-quarantine? Yoon Shusha could not help but be curious. What do you mean by semi-quarantine? There can only be one parent watching over him. Because Qianqian and Rue are at home, he is worried, so he volunteered to stay and take care of Xiao Bao. Yoon Shusha returned to the ward, feeling a little uneasy. The ward was very big. There were a total of 4 beds. Yoon Shusha originally wanted to let Yuyaro stay in the VIP ward, but it was said that the VIP ward was already booked. Since he was already in it, it was impossible to chase him out. Therefore, Yoon Shusha let Yuyaro stay in a slightly more ordinary ward. In the end, all 3 of the 4 beds collapsed. Yo-Yo was fine. However, even Xiaochen could not withstand it. It was enough to show how fierce this new type of childhood influenza was. Soon, the test results were out. Yo-Yo was suffering from a new type of childhood influenza, so she had to be quarantined as soon as possible. All the children who were in contact with Yo-Yo had to be quarantined as well. This meant that Yuyaro, Xiaochen, Yo-Yo, and Jingyang would all be sent to the isolation ward. Furthermore, only one parent was allowed to accompany the child. Yoon Shusha was a little dumbfounded when she heard the results. The doctor and nurse hurried over and took Yuyaro and Xiaochen's blood samples, saying that they needed to conduct further tests. Jingyang naturally couldn't escape either. He only had a common cold, but because Yuyaro and Yo-Yo were also implicated, Yoon Shusha could not help but feel guilty. She repeatedly apologized to Jing Qi. Although Jing Qi was worried, she didn't say anything. If it's really a new type of childhood flu, it's inevitable even if you leave the hospital. It's actually a good thing to be able to diagnose it as soon as possible. In short, let's just wait and see. Okay. The next morning, the doctor and nurse walked over and sent the 3 children to the isolation area. When she entered the isolation area, Yoon Shusha had to wear the special isolation suit provided by the hospital. She wore a blue level 2 isolation suit, a mask, and even transparent protective goggles. Yoon Shusha felt uncomfortable wearing this kind of isolation suit. She put on the isolation suit and walked into the isolation area. She happened to see an extremely tall man standing in front of her. Yoon Shusha recognized his astonishing aura at a glance. This man was Jiyu Jinglian. She walked over and took a look. Jiyu Jinglian also turned around and was a little surprised to see her. Chapter 45:11. Jiyu Jinglian said, Xiao Bao and Yuyaro are in the same ward. Do you know that? Yoon Shusha said, I don't know. I only know that the 3 children have been arranged to stay in the same quarantine area. I asked the hospital to arrange it that way. Jiyu Jinglian paused for a moment before he continued, the ward is already crowded. There are 6 beds in one ward, so it's just right for the 5 children. They can also take care of each other. 6 beds. Is it really that crowded? The ward is not small. Even if there are 6 beds, it won't seem crowded. Although it was called a quarantine area, it was not as exaggerated as being completely isolated. It was far from being fully armed. Before Jiyu Jinglian and Yun Shusha entered the ward, they heard Xiao Bao's voice from afar. Aha! Just right, 19 points. Come, pay up. WeChat and Alipay are both accepted. Jiyu Jinglian frowned deeply. He exchanged glances with Yun Shusha and seemed to have understood something. He quickly walked into the room and saw a few children surrounding a table. The children were all wearing masks, but it could not hide their fierce aura. Yo-Yo, Xiao Ichen, and Xiao Bao sat at the table while Jing Yang watched from the side. Yu Yaro stood next to Jing Yang. She was wearing a mask. Although she did not understand what was going on, she opened her eyes wide and watched curiously. Xiao Bao, Yo-Yo, and Xiao Ichen were gambling. You're so proud of 19 points. Yo-Yo flipped the cards in her hand and snorted coldly. Did I say anything when I got 21 points? Xiao Bao heard this and immediately leaned over to look at the cards in Yo-Yo's hand in disbelief. 10, 2, 9. It was exactly 21 points. This game was played by 2 to 6 people. Apart from the Joker, there were 52 cards. The goal of the players was to make the total points of the cards in their hand not exceed 21 points and try to make it as big as possible. Once the number exceeded 21, it would be considered a win. If it did not exceed 21 points, then the person closest to 21 points would be the winner. This was a very classic gambling game. Jiyu Jinglian had taught Xiao Bao how to play this game. After entering the hospital, Xiao Bao secretly took out the poker cards he had hidden in the hospital to play. Because of Gu's instructions, the children were all assigned to the same ward. The relationship between the Jiyu family and the Mu family had eased over the past few years. Occasionally, they would visit each other and meet each other at gatherings. The children were already very familiar with each other, so they did not feel awkward and did not feel awkward being in the same ward. After entering the ward, she had to stay in the ward all day and couldn't walk around. Other than eating and sleeping, she could only watch boring TV programs. Because the semi-quarantine area was filled with children, Peppa Pig was playing on a loop on the TV. At first, he watched with great interest. But after a long time, they inevitably felt bored. Hence, Xiao Bao suggested that they play 21 points and asked if anyone wanted to participate. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen ignored him at first. Then, Xiao Bao started to mock them. I'm not targeting anyone. Forgive me for being blunt, but everyone here is trash. It would have been better if he did not provoke them. After he mocked them, Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen immediately sat down at the card table. Xiao Bao came to the hospital with tens of thousands of yuan. Yo-Yo and Xiao Ichen were not short of money. Hence, after they agreed on the end of the game, the children gathered in the hospital to gamble. Chapter 45:12. What surprised Yo-Yo was that he had thought that Xiao Bao was only good at martial arts. He did not expect Xiao Bao to be so good at blackjack. After a few rounds, there were wins and losses. Yo-Yo did not have much of an advantage over Xiao Bao. However, since Xiao Bao had made his threat, Yo-Yo would definitely not admit defeat. Yo-Yo had never played blackjack before, but he understood it after Xiao Bao explained it once. Xiao Bao relied on his experience, while Yo-Yo relied on his IQ. Yo-Yo was very smart and learned everything quickly. Blackjack was not difficult. It required 80% luck and 20% courage. The most important thing was to dare to go all out. In the beginning, Xiao Bao was quite pleased with himself when he got a small advantage from Yo-Yo. However, in the 3rd and 4th round, Yo-Yo's luck got better. In addition, he was more familiar with the rules. Xiao Bao lost 4 rounds in a row. Ouch! Xiao Bao collapsed on the table and started to lose his temper. How is that possible? You got exactly 21 points in 2 rounds. Do you know how to cheat? Jiyu Changza, you have to admit defeat. Yo-Yo did not care if he admitted defeat or not. He was the one who suggested blackjack, and he was also the one who questioned him about cheating. You cheated. The winner cheated. What kind of logic is that? Also, I can't afford to lose a few thousand yuan. Do you want to cheat? Yo-Yo had a sharp tongue. Xiao Bao would not gain anything from arguing with him. Jiyu Jinglian and Yun Shusha stood at the door. Their eyelids were twitching violently. Yo-Yo had just shuffled the cards when he saw Yun Shusha and Jiyu Jinglian standing at the door. He was so frightened that he threw the cards away. Mommy. He completely ignored Jiyu Jinglian, who was beside him. Jiyu Jinglian was also used to his disregard. When Xiao Bao saw Yo-Yo's reaction, he turned around in confusion. However, Jiyu Jinglian had already walked up to him and grabbed his ear. Wah! Daddy. You're still calling me Dad. I don't have a son like you. Woo, who are you trying to embarrass by losing to someone in blackjack? Yun Shusha was completely speechless. She originally thought that Jiyu Jinglian had walked over aggressively to teach Xiao Bao a lesson about gambling. But in the end, it was because of this. No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't find anything wrong with it. After all, Jiyu Jinglian had been immersed in gambling since he was young. He could not be too casual about gambling. As his son, playing cards was indeed not a big deal, but he lost too badly. Xiao Bao said pitifully, "What? I didn't want to lose to him. He had good luck, so how can you blame me? Luck is also a part of one's ability." Xiao Bao started to sell his father out. If you're so good, why don't you play around with Yo-Yo? If you can beat Yo-Yo, it's not too late to say such sarcastic word. Chen-Ph, I think you definitely can't beat Yo-Yo. His luck is too good. Had he ever seen such a son? Pushing his own father into a fire pit. Asking him to play blackjack with a 10-year-old kid. Whether he won or lost, it wouldn't look good. If he won, it would only be seen as an adult bullying a child. If he lost, it would be even more embarrassing. However, if he didn't play with Yo-Yo, it would look like he had a guilty conscience. Jiyu Jinglian gritted his teeth in hatred. How could he have such a stupid son? Seeing this, Yo-Yo also started to put up a banner. Jiyu Jinglian, if you feel indignant on behalf of Jiyu Changza, why don't you play with me too?